Our story begins on a moonlit night in a dark forest where someone is cutting a tree with a chainsaw. The sound of the saw tears through the silent night and finishes. She takes a deep breath. Everything is ready. The tree cutting is done, only one last step remains. She inserts a tube into the tree trunk, pumping the nutrients fully in. This tree is very hungry. It can absorb it all. But why did the forest owner let the trees end up like this? They really don't appreciate life at all. Now she just needs to check the trees inside to finish. She'll come back tomorrow to see how they are. Until then, that day was just an ordinary day like any other. She went to the hospital to see her husband's overdue bills, then returned to check the recently treated tree. She argued with a customer who had overdue hospital fees for over a month. Then she went up the mountain to check on the abandoned trees. A day like any other. At least it was supposed to be. In the forest, a man was begging for his life. He pleaded for mercy and promised to tell everything, all he knew. But the man in black coldly replied that he was wrong. Here, what should be begged for is death. The tragedy had just begun. At that moment, the main character witnessed everything right before her eyes. It was now a case of making someone disappear and covering it up. To avoid violating platform policies, I will use euphemisms throughout the story, everyone. She should have called the police, but as she took a step back, she accidentally made a slight noise. The attacker immediately paused, hearing the sound. He knew now he had to deal with one more body. The chainsaw in his hand fell. The girl suddenly realized there was another body. He looked like a professional assassin. Now she had been discovered. What should she do? If she moved, he would see her. Completely panicked, not knowing what to do. The killer turned his cold gaze and noticed her presence. Their eyes met. He asked her, "Aren't you going to run?" She trembled in panic and dashed through the forest, leaving him behind. That made him burst out laughing with delight. She quickly called the Wuyong police station. Breathing heavily, she reported that someone was burying a body behind the hospital up on the mountain. They had to come immediately. The officer asked if she was sure about what she saw. She confirmed firmly and said there were two people. The officer told her to stay calm. "First, please give your name." She replied, "I'm Lee John." She didn't have time to explain much more. The officer said they would be on their way immediately. But if it was a false report, she would be fined. Before she could say more, thin strands wrapped tightly around her neck, causing the phone to drop to the ground. The killer said in a hoarse voice, "Hey, you forgot the chainsaw. Hold on to it tight." She didn't want to die this way. She had lived her whole life with the only wish to be peaceful, trouble-free, and she was finally close to that life. But she absolutely refused to die at the hands of this murderer. Gripping the chainsaw tightly, she swung hard, striking him straight on the head. The strands around her neck began to loosen. The killer took a wound right on his forehead. Their eyes met, and in hers reflected the image behind him. The man who had been buried alive struggled to get up, using a stone in his hand to strike the killer's head. She was shocked and stunned by the powerful blow. The killer began to lose consciousness and staggered, falling down the cliff. His body hit the ground hard. The man who dropped the stone hurriedly fled the scene. Lee Xian was frozen in fear as she witnessed it all. And that was the beginning of her taking care of her secret patient. A vegetative state patient had been motionless for 2 years. 2 years later, we see Lee Xian standing with the principal of a school, explaining that the tree is constipated. She said, "What you mean, the tree can't excrete normally like humans. Plants also need to eliminate waste to maintain their health." Hearing that, the principal thought she was talking nonsense. His voice unconsciously rose sharply, but then he tried to lower it. He said, "This tree is a symbol of our school. It's the green color associated with the students. Please treat it. You're a tree doctor, an expert in researching, caring for, diagnosing, and performing surgery on trees when necessary to keep them healthy." Mrs. Leon replied that he could rest assured and leave it all to her. The treatment process isn't complicated. In short, the tree is constipated because after absorbing nutrients, it can't excrete just like humans. But actually, the principal had no good intentions. He thought Leon was just a fool. He only wanted her to treat it incorrectly so the tree would die, then make her pay the treatment costs and demand additional compensation. Anyway, these trees were going to be cut down. But for now, he wanted to make some money by cheating Leon. At that moment, Leon suddenly asked him, "Did you bury anything under the roots of this tree?" The principal pretended to be confused. Leon said she heard recently that the school built another area, so maybe some bricks, tiles, or cement bags were left over. All of those were buried under the tree's roots. Those things harden like stone when they meet water. When mixed in the soil, the tree can't grow properly and will get root rot disease. The principal didn't understand what she was talking about at all. Lee Xian knew they must have been happy to save on waste disposal costs, right? She would report this to the city hall. Then they would have to pay back many times that amount. And as she said, excretion is important for humans, animals, and plants. After saying that and just turning away, the principal hurriedly called her back. Wait, let me explain the second thing clearly. Leon understood that if she returned to the hospital now, her superior would be angry because she had damaged the reputation. So she turned back and quickly stepped closer to the principal. You are a doctor who wants to be the voice of the trees. You're the best at saving their lives. And depending on the situation, you also know how to remove weeds. Moreover, you also like to get rid of people like you, principal. She handed him her business card. She hoped he would visit the Spruce Tree Hospital regularly. Riding her motorcycle back to the hospital, Li Yan thought silently that as a female doctor, the only thing others wanted was to look down on her and find ways to sabotage her. She was too used to working in an all-male environment in this field. She received a call from the hospital director. If Li Yan didn't arrive within 5 minutes, she would open the door on the second floor. This shocked her. It turned out the director heard strange noises coming from upstairs. Li Yan hurriedly said the head of department must have misunderstood. How could there be noise in an empty room? Yes, director. Sorry, Li Yan, but she has already called a locksmith. Li Yan panicked and told her to wait. She would be there in 5 minutes, or actually 3 minutes. In the meantime, absolutely do not open the door. Then she hung up. But the director told the locksmith to start working. The reason Li Yan didn't want the director to open that door was because inside there was a dangerous plant person being treated. At that moment, Li Yan rushed to the hospital, took off her helmet, and hurried upstairs. The locksmith was preparing to remove the lock. As he was about to start, Li Yan made it up the stairs in time and hurriedly told the director to wait a moment. She told the locksmith he could go home. Payment would be settled later. She shouted she had warned the director not to enter the room on the second floor. But the director said that was just an excuse to hide something. She said sternly, "Don't you trust me? We've known each other for so many years. Even if you had gold in there, I wouldn't take it." If it were real gold, Li Yan wouldn't care if the director took it or not, but this was different. She tried to think of a reason to keep the director from entering, because if anything happened to what was inside the room, her life would be in danger. Everything started with a man named Kwon Ji-seok. He made a deal with her. It all began 2 years ago, the day that changed her entire life. When she witnessed everything and saw the assassin lying motionless under the cliff. At that time, Kwon Ji-seok had imprisoned her in an unknown location. It was a slaughterhouse, a terrifying scene with a row of butchers sitting in a straight line at a long table. "I know you. Do you know why?" He coldly looked at her. "Person she abandoned left half dead on the hill behind is my younger brother." Li Xian was stunned to hear that. Clearly, these two brothers are both abnormal. She tried to explain that he misunderstood her, that she was only defending herself, not the cause of his condition. That person is sending someone else to meet the ancestors. He is burying someone alive, simply put. He said angrily, "My brother goes crazy when interrupted while happily burying someone alive." Li Xian was deeply shocked, realizing she couldn't reason with Ji-seok using normal logic. She really wasn't the one who knocked him out that day. She only went up the mountain to care for the plants. The one buried alive is the person who hit him with a rock from behind. It's true she fought back with a chainsaw, but it wasn't nearly that serious. Ji-seok narrowed his eyes, speaking evenly. "My brother has incredibly sharp ears. He's not stupid or insensitive enough to miss someone sneaking up behind him to attack." Now Li Yan didn't know what to do. She had to escape somehow, but truly didn't know how in this place while being tied up. What else could she possibly do? Baji Seok told her that whether she hit him with a rock or a chainsaw didn't matter to him. As long as he could make her the perfect culprit, it wouldn't be difficult. As if she was the one who attacked and caused his brother to fall into a vegetative state. The only thing he wanted was someone to pay for this. But Li Yan had no idea that the real killer had fallen into a vegetative state. Now she understood clearly. She would never get out of here. It was the end of her life. Now Ji-seok said that in exchange for her life, he wanted to make a deal. If she had any sense, she could walk away from here safely. He asked if she understood what he was saying. She replied yes. Yes, this was a mutually beneficial deal. Good. She's quick to understand. He handed her a piece of paper. The guards removed her handcuffs, leaving some marks on her wrists. He said he would soon catch the real culprit and bring justice to her. But until then, he wanted her to take care of his brother, who was in a vegetative state. He wanted her to find a way to prevent the brother from leaving the room. If possible, it would be best to tie his legs up. And then 2 years passed. Late at night, Li Yan climbed the stairs and entered the second-floor room where the murderer lay. He had been sleeping like a tree on the second floor of this house for 2 years. The only additional information Li Jian knew was his name Wan Che-yu. The next day, the site in the forest where the body was buried was cleaned up, leaving no traces. The police investigated, but found no fingerprints. Li Xian was fined for giving false information. As soon as she signed the contract with Ji-seok, the second floor had been built in the blink of an eye. There was always a doctor on duty diagnosing and caring every second, every minute. Above all that atmosphere, the overwhelming power of Ji-seok weighed heavily, accusing her and suffocating her. That statement was absolutely not an exaggeration, meaning until the real culprit was caught, she had to do everything to keep this killer in the hospital. So she could only pray that Chu would never wake up. If he didn't wake up, Li Jian could continue to live. Every day she silently prayed that Chu would never open his eyes, but she didn't know that one of his fingers had slightly moved. The next morning, her boss showed her a photo of the Son of Sun landscaping company. The question was, what did she think of him? The boss looked at the photo. She asked again if the young man would be her new partner. The boss shook his head no. This young man was an opportunity for Li Jian. Sun's son had come to create a date. If Li Jian didn't seize the chance to meet him, what other opportunity would she have? She asked again what kind of opportunity. The boss said if things continued like this, they wouldn't last long at this hospital. Lost many big contracts to Dongso Hospital. But anyway, the people at Dongso Hospital are very skilled. They are not ordinary. Dongso Hospital, with its newly built 5-story building, noisily appeared in Wadum, starting to fiercely compete for contracts in landscaping, planting, construction, and agriculture, quickly taking over all the contracts of Spruce Hospital. She was stunned, recalling some terrible memories from her time at Dongso. The boss's call pulled her back to the present. She wanted her to reclaim the contract that was stolen. She asked what to do. The boss told her to have a drink with Sun's son so they could get closer, but Li Xian immediately refused. She was not like her boss, who was always like a venomous snake full of evil schemes. The boss's face twisted when she heard that and shouted, asking what nonsense she was spouting. The boss reminded her to reconsider. She said she didn't have the skills to be a gold digger, but she should think about the future of the hospital and herself. At least she should properly greet him so people would recognize her. Then Li Xian asked how the boss knew Sun's son had returned to Korea. The boss replied that old man Sun told her. She wondered why he told her. The boss said they had been quite close before. The boss crossed her arms and began lecturing Li Xian. A good husband comes by fate, but must also be chosen with vision and wisdom. If she didn't know how to use her youth later, she'd be left like a moldy piece of bread. The next morning, Li Xian couldn't stand having to study civic education anymore. She went outside to check the garden. The boss watched helplessly, thinking maybe Li Xian would live alone all her life. But for Li Xian, having a husband was like poison. She just wanted to live peacefully alone, taking care of plants for a long time. A life without struggle, just like the quiet life she had now. Although that peace was never fully guaranteed because on the second floor there was still a murderer lying there. The truth was truly terrifying. She always feared he would wake up. To the point that even in her own home day after day, she couldn't feel at ease. But gradually that unease turned into a strange relief. It was time for her to wash up and go upstairs. Going upstairs before bed had become a ritual to close the day to make sure tomorrow would be as safe as today and to pray that Xiaoyu would not wake from his coma. But at that moment, he was no longer lying on the bed. Where was he? She suddenly remembered the agreement signed with Chi Seo. If anything happened to his brother, she would be accused of murder. She had to find him by any means. But before she could realize, Xiaoyu was standing right next to her. He looked just like a ghost in the dark. He suddenly pushed her down onto the bed. He pinned her down. How could that be? Xiaoyu had been paralyzed for 2 years. His muscles should have wasted away. Where did this strength come from? Mr. Li Zhang was terrified, begging him to let her go. She had to stay calm now. In this situation, staying calm was the only option. She reassured Xiaoyu that he had just woken up, so his mind was confused, but she would explain everything clearly. Right now, his physical condition was not normal. He had to let her call a doctor, so first he should let her go. Xiaoyu leaned close to her ear, not wanting to hear any more words. He just wanted her to answer the first question. Did she lock him up, or was he the one who locked her up? Li Xian hurriedly replied no. Absolutely not. Xiaoyu, what kind of life have you been through to think like that? This wasn't a dangerous situation. He just had been in a coma too long, paralyzed for 2 years. Only now could he barely get up, so she begged him to calm down. Hey, Mr. Painter, you're drawing a bit too much there, huh? Paralyzed in bed for 2 years, but it seems the younger brother isn't paralyzed after all. He's been holding the same uncomfortable position all this time. At that moment, Yu grabbed her hand and pinned her down. Once again, he pushed her down on the bed. Their eyes met. Yu's eyes shone brightly in the darkness. What kind of look was that? Like the eyes of a wild beast sparkling in the dark, yet simultaneously empty, like a shallow, transparent well with nothing left inside. Yu kept hearing someone call his name. He thought it might really be his name, but what did it mean? He asked her, "Are you someone important to me, or just someone I can eliminate anytime?" As he spoke, he spun a syringe in his hand, threatening to harm her. Clearly, Yu couldn't remember anymore. He didn't even know her identity, just as he forgot his own name. If that's the case, maybe she can find a way to stay safe from this man. She must fight to survive. That's why she seriously told Yu she felt heartbroken when he spoke to her like that. Didn't he know how important she was to him? She began to show her acting skills, saying their relationship was much deeper than he thought. They were tightly connected, impossible to easily sever. As she spoke, she recalled everything that had happened. Her whole body trembled violently. Yu reached out to lift her face. But why was she trembling so much? Had she once chopped off his finger and sold it? Or was she just an empty-headed fool with a stupid body here to drain his strength? Thinking it over, he wasn't sure. The only thing he remembered was these filthy words. Just woke up after 2 years, so he babbled nonsense. I don't even understand what he's saying. Please forgive Yu for this part. She asked why he would say such things. She insisted that their relationship was very good. He was always gentle with her. He even put a bracelet on her. In fact, that was when he wrapped fishing line around her neck, thinking she was about to log out. He asked if their relationship was really like that. Xian answered yes, but he still thought he was a real bastard because from the way she talked, it seemed like she was brainwashed. She frantically waved her hands hurriedly, explaining it wasn't like that. But deep down, she really had those thoughts. But in her panic, she explained that he had never forced her into anything. He had never used violence brutally like today, nor threatened anyone. He had never done anything bad to her. But all those things were just her deepest desires. Meanwhile, her frightened and terrified expression was completely the opposite. Yu bowed his head closer and cupped Li Zhong's face with his hands. He asked why. Why could he not do bad things? What held him back, Li Zhong answered, because it was prescribed by law. What does 6 laws mean, Yu doubted. Xian tried to think of an answer. She recalled what the boss had told her. At this part, the boss said nonsense that didn't mean anything. She gathered all her courage to speak. She couldn't let Chu get reckless because it would harm herself. Now she had to make Chu stand still. She told him she was his wife. Clearly it was a lie, but she had to say it to stop him from hurting her. As soon as she heard Chu's head throb with pain and exhaustion, he collapsed into Leon's arms. She tried to shake him awake, but it was useless. That night, a deadly seed began to sprout. One morning, Xian began treating a tree struck by lightning during a storm. That tree had been planted the day the woman gave birth to her son. Now her son was in the army, and the tree was the only thing she had left. Leon checked a bit and felt the condition was serious, but luckily the roots were not damaged. It could fully recover. The owner asked if she could really save the tree. If handled poorly, the condition could worsen, and if careless, it could be very dangerous. Leon said they had to try their best. But first, no need to pick any auspicious day or month. Just start by protecting the injured part with iron chains. She asked the owner if there were any local herbal medicines in the hospital. She nodded but was about to say something more when Leon said she needed to make a phone call and would be right back. But while talking with the doctor, he said he didn't know when Cho would wake up. That didn't make sense since she had seen him awake with her own eyes. She had even talked to him. He had even pressed close to her. The doctor didn't know how to explain it. Actually, what he meant was that Cho wasn't unconscious. A month before Li Zhong contacted the hospital, it was true that Cho had woken up after 2 years in a coma. After being transferred to the hospital, she personally confirmed that for a whole week he showed incredible recovery abilities. But since then, the patient began showing strange symptoms related to hypersomnia. It's an illness also called Sleeping Beauty syndrome. More simply put, it's excessive sleeping. All necessary tests had been done, but no clear cause was found except for memory loss. The brain showed no abnormalities. Right now, they could only suspect. They had to monitor the progression. It really is that syndrome. Once you fall asleep, you can't be sure when you'll wake up. For this patient's sleep time increased from 3 days to 5 days, and now it's been 12 days without waking. Yes, thinking so, the doctor decided to transfer the patient to Li Zhong's home for care. She panicked and asked again, so that means Cho is not in a vegetative coma. It's just that no one knows when he will wake up. Right, the doctor confirmed that was correct. That made her feel much relieved. She happily thanked the doctor and hung up. She apologized to the boss for making her wait so long, then turned to the woman and said the tree would definitely be saved. Don't worry, the woman sighed in relief upon hearing that. The boss noticed Lee John's mood had improved a lot, but the doctor noticed her voice was tense and somewhat unstable. He even forgot to tell her one thing. The syndrome he mentioned is also called Klein-Levin syndrome. Usually this syndrome not only causes prolonged sleep, but also strange symptoms like erratic behavior, excessive eating, irritability, and even excessive sexual desire. But he didn't mention any of that to Lee Seon. Anyway, no one knows when he will wake up. Yes, he can tell you next time. Director Kyun Ji-seok must be very worried seeing his younger brother like that. It would be best to take him to a large hospital for treatment. Yet they brought him back to that dilapidated old house, even though it wasn't his job to investigate. Just do the duty and get paid, that's all. But the words Cho kept repeating after waking really made the doctor uneasy. That time when Cho asked if he could say something, the doctor replied, "Okay, please go ahead." He muttered one sentence, "Please don't wake up." This made the doctor's eyes widen in confusion. It was dark. Leon happily went up to the second floor. She believed everything would be different now because she could change it. It had been 2 years she'd been searching. She felt a tightening in her chest every time she came up here, even though it was just a crazy lie. Well, pretending to be his wife seemed to have changed something inside him. After a month, she started thinking about the words she had said. She pounded her feet on the bed continuously, regretting that she blurted out the first thing that popped into her head. But now that man was in a state where no one knew when he'd wake up. That meant she had a chance to fix everything somehow. It truly was a rare blessing. It was already late. The medical staff reported they had moved Cho to the second floor. She went in to see if he was sleeping, but when she entered, he wasn't in the room. That meant that bastard had escaped outside. She began searching everywhere, calling his name. She called hoarsely and was exhausted, thinking, with his injured body, he couldn't have gone far. But it turned out he had gone quite far from the house. She silently thought about what would happen if she couldn't find him. At that moment, she noticed some bloodstains. Looking up ahead, she saw scattered chicken feathers. Right in front of her was Cho. His clothes were covered in blood. She wanted to turn and run, but had to hold back, calm herself, and step forward. She had to take Cho home immediately. In this condition, it must have been very difficult for him to move. She asked why he went outside, but first told him to put the chicken down. So they both turned back. Cho had something in his mouth. He started chewing and then spat out a chicken neck bone. "Phew, that's disgusting." That stunned her. She couldn't believe he had bitten a live chicken to death right in front of her. She wondered if his brain injury was just simple amnesia. He asked where she had been. The only familiar face to him was hers. The door wouldn't open again. She recalled Cho had broken the back door to come find her. She told herself to stay calm. He was unstable. There were still many chances to take advantage of the situation. She told him things must have been very confusing. She was the doctor taking care of him. A doctor, but a doctor for plants. Ha ha ha. "I noticed the artist often draws really suggestive angles, you know." She told him he needed to know he had been asleep all this time, before his body was too weak. So he couldn't wake up for a long time. That's why his body is probably very unstable now. Seeing things that don't exist or hearing strange voices is just the brain playing tricks. She stepped closer and explained it was all just a dream. That's why they both had to go back so he could sleep deeply. And when he woke up, he would feel better. When Chaeyu heard it was all a dream, he immediately dropped the chicken. Maybe it was true. If it were real, she wouldn't be standing anymore. I seriously suggest the artist stop drawing those blatantly suggestive upward angles. Definitely the ladies don't like it, and we men don't either. Right, guys, Chaeyu confessed that in his dream, he only saw himself having physical relations. And he did it with the woman who was supposed to be his wife. So he wasn't too confused. On the contrary, now he was even more certain he had a wife. As he said this and approached her, he suddenly stepped back in fear. Her feet were wrapped by creeping vines. As he moved closer to Lee Yun, he just wanted to escape. She knew Chaeyu was confused. She wanted to find an excuse to get away from this situation. But the trap, she said, only tightened, making it impossible for her to move a step. Chaeyu asked her name. Did he want to know her name? Lee Yan didn't know if she should tell the truth. He warned coldly that he didn't want to ask more than 3 times. Finally, she answered. Chaeyu tried to remember her name, but it was even more hopeless than he thought. He questioned if she wanted to abandon him because he was useless. Lee Seon hurried to say she was just worried. Surely this must have made him very confused and upset. He continued to ask if she did it because of him. Leon nodded slightly. First, she had to get out of this situation before thinking further. Chaeyu was displeased. He said, "Is that what you call caring?" He looked like a zombie right now. She herself said they were legally married. Now she planned to abandon him like throwing away an unnecessary relative. At this moment, Leon trembled, almost crying. Seeing that, Cheyu reassured himself. Maybe he really was her husband since he couldn't find her. Suddenly, anger flared up in his head. Maybe it was because of his fierce nature, but it seemed he truly loved Leon. No, that's not true. He once tried to kill me without even knowing it. She fell into the whirlpool of Cheyu's thoughts. But he still had a big weakness. He didn't know anything. So for now, she still held the upper hand. At least she believed so. She told him he needed treatment for his wounds. So first, both of you have to go home. As soon as she heard the word home, Cheyu immediately asked if she meant our honeymoon house. She knew it was a lie, but still nodded in the end. It seems dealing with him will be more complicated than imagined. Both of them returned home. She looked exhausted while he was always bloody and messy like that. Why do you look so drained? Oh, Grandpa Che, you have some self-respect. On the way, Cheyu asked countless questions like an interrogation. Meanwhile, she had to push him on a handcart so he wouldn't hurt his foot. Actually, Cheyu wanted to walk the whole way himself, but Li Yan said if he kept walking barefoot, his soles would tear even worse. If anything happened to his body, she would be held responsible. First, she told him to wash up and change clothes. In the meantime, she would look for the first aid kit. Her care made him feel drawn in. She found the medical kit and carefully bandaged the wound on his hand. It must have hurt a lot, but he didn't flinch at all. They looked at each other. She lowered her head, not understanding why he was looking at her like that, like a predator watching its prey. She just wanted to end everything quickly. His wound was bandaged, but to be sure the doctor would assess his condition more thoroughly tomorrow. Now she had to leave. Cheyu asked why, if they were husband and wife, shouldn't they sleep together instead of in separate beds? Li Yan felt like she was shocked by electricity. She hurried to explain that maybe he was right, but he was still sick and needed comfortable rest, so she argued back. Even though he was sick, he was no longer in a vegetative state. No longer vegetative, but now in an animal state. Nobody goes around eating raw chicken. Bali Yan didn't know how to handle it. All because of her own lie. Cheyu moved closer and whispered in her ear. Or is it because we are strangers? He asked. Or is it because I'm not like the husband in your memories? His voice deepened. His sad face suddenly looked as obedient as a kitten. He said he men would choose to be silent like a tree. Not harsh, not forcing, and no threats either. He promised to behave like the husband she once knew. And because of that, he wanted her to sleep next to him. And so they both lay down. She was lying next to a murderer. Cheyu wanted to ask her all sorts of questions. She just hoped he would fall asleep soon. He wanted to know why he had to be hospitalized, why he ended up like this. In short, he wanted to know everything from the beginning. She made up that they went up the mountain and had an accident. Luckily, she wasn't seriously injured. Cheyu wanted to know how long they had been married. She replied 2 years ago. So after they married, she took care of him all that time. He felt guilty for being a burden to her. Well, she was a botanist specializing in plants. So maybe it was no problem with another plant species. He asked again how long they had dated. The questions got harder and harder. She had no experience in this area at all. If he dug any deeper, she wouldn't be able to answer reasonably. She quickly said they lived under the same roof, closed their eyes sharing the same bed, right after they met. He was slightly surprised. Right after meeting, what do you mean? She continued to make up that they spent the night together the very first time they met. As soon as they met, they were inseparable, and she thought he was the ideal man. He asked coldly, a one-night stand right from the start. Then he looked terrifying with those empty, soulless eyes. Li Yan hurriedly denied it. No, it wasn't like that. He sweet-talked her and seduced her to bed. Cheyu smiled sharply and asked back if everything was really like that. His half-smile and eyes looked very cunning and somewhat mysterious. He admitted it himself. If that's how it was, then I'm truly a shameless man. At that moment, Lion couldn't stand that expression any longer. She just wants to erase that image of Chu from her mind. She doesn't understand how the story took this turn. If you've shared the same blanket because you're husband and wife, the next step surely would be about intimacy. She can't even imagine it. She has to stop it. Not everything he says is true. Actually, we're not compatible in that matter. Her scolding face suddenly looks tired from being sly. When she heard that, what did you say? She quickly corrected herself. I mean, that night we just didn't click, so it failed. Maybe both of us were awkward. Luckily, she didn't say it was you, Gio. Otherwise, fate would be like that chicken this morning. Chu covered his face with his hand. This was even more shocking than his amnesia. Exactly where did it go wrong? Well, usually when men hear this, it's like an unspoken truth that the partner is criticizing them. Going to the market and running out of money already, there's no greater embarrassment. At this point, Leon started to rummage through his memory, gathering all the experiences from 32 years of life, trying to find a reasonable explanation. Then suddenly she thought of something. She told him the size wasn't right. Every time we did it, I didn't feel anything. You never made me reach climax. Besides, I don't have much desire anyway. So basically, you're calling me a rat tail, stirring the grease. How can you say you didn't feel anything? Think hard and then spit out that answer? Oh my God. She kept thinking and fabricating that from the first time they met, she thought he was like a monk. They always maintained a pure and healthy relationship. After that conversation, Shu lay down, sighed, and put his hand on his forehead. He wondered how she had cared for him in a vegetative state for the past 2 years. While a new relationship was just beginning, it seemed like she truly loved him quite a lot. Meanwhile, misunderstandings with Li Zhang only piled up. For now, everything seemed fine. The more she suppressed Chu, the more she needed a bigger misunderstanding. She just hoped he was sound asleep. She silently prayed to the tree spirit for Chu to sleep for a long time. Sleep and not wake up would be fine too. But just as she clasped her hands in prayer, he was still awake, even very alert. Who told you to say a man was useless, foolish? Not yet. He turned to harshly question her meaning when she said he was clumsy. He asked if it was because the foreplay was still awkward, or because his skills were still poor, or why exactly needed clarification. A deep lesson for Li Zhang and all the ladies out there. Nothing is more painful than directly telling a man he's weak in that area like this. Ha 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 ha. If that's true, just keep quiet or take care of yourself quietly. Saying it out loud is a disaster. Lisa said she doesn't remember clearly, but that night everything ended very quickly. In short, she said he was not at all enduring. Upon hearing this, Chu's army was completely stunned. His eyes bulged white as a boiled pig's. This was like her stabbing a knife through his heart. He was stunned, eyes wide open, staring fixedly at the ceiling. I laughed so hard I almost died at this part. Here I'm sharing a bit of my personal opinion because it's too funny. Please bear with me. Now she just needs patience so Chu sleeps as long as possible. She just wants that syndrome to kick in so she can live peacefully. The next morning, Leon opened his eyes and woke up. Chu, who had woken earlier, asked if she slept well. Time seemed to stop. Her mind hadn't caught up yet. Then realizing it, she jumped up like possessed. She wondered what was going on. How was he awake? Wasn't he supposed to have hypersomnia? What happened to the sleepwalker? A while later, the doctor came to check on Chu's condition. He thought it was still too early to conclude that Chu was in a state where he could slip into prolonged sleep anytime, even tomorrow. He wanted to find a clear pattern and needed more data from the dreams. That means tomorrow he might wake up just like today because the environment at home and in the hospital is very different. The doctor suspects something woke him up. Chu told the doctor that last night he slept with his wife. Upon hearing that, the doctor immediately turned to look at Li Zhang, but she avoided his gaze. The doctor asked if that meant they had sex. She quickly waved her hand and said no, absolutely not. The doctor said they would try a few other methods, but for now it would be beneficial for the patient if both continued to sleep together to monitor the situation. Hearing that, Li Xian felt like she was falling into an abyss. She sat watching TV after hearing she had to sleep with Chu. Her mind was exhausted, especially if he started walking around on the first floor. She didn't know what to say to her boss. She imagined all kinds of lies, but knew she couldn't fool her boss. The Chu family is expert at seeing through male-female relationships. There was no way to fool her. Above all, she was tired of handling everything alone. But if this news leaked, who knows what GSEO would do to the Chu family? Yet she heard reporters on TV say that if something was beyond her ability, she should report to the police or at least ask people around for help. So she decided to tell everything to the Chu family. The lady fully trusted her story. The boss scolded her for hiding everything and even pretending to be the wife of that murderer. She even hit her again for this foolishness. Leon explained that she didn't know what else to do. That decision was made in a moment of fear. Her boss said that once she pretended to be the wife, she would be too deeply involved with that killer. Leon really didn't want to go that far, but if she didn't, both their lives would be in danger. Leon just wanted her boss to treat her like a married woman to fool others. The boss asked where that guy was now, and Leon was about to answer. But just then, Chu called her. The boss turned and saw the young man coming down the stairs. He was truly attractive, handsome, but his hair was a bit wild and his empty eyes really gave you chills. Leon hurriedly warned the Chu family to be careful. Yet the Chu family calmly called him son-in-law lion, leaving Leon speechless at her boss's boldness. Both sat down and talked. This was the first time Chu had heard of this hospital. He asked if this was a hospital for caring for and treating plants, and asked what he used to do for a living. She was startled, but honestly replied that he once planted flowers in the hospital, but in truth he had buried bodies in the mountains. The boss knew she was cleverly manipulating him, but it was hard to believe that young man had buried her boss's body. She thought to herself that his face looked like an angel's. At that moment, Chae-yu called the Chu family mother-in-law. He wanted to sit next to his wife Lee Jun, but she didn't respond and he didn't understand what was happening. From Lee Jun's perspective, she thought if he waited too long, he might get angry. She had to avoid conflict immediately and rushed to sit next to him. Ba Chae-yu suddenly brightened. The boss, with a thoughtful look, understood that things seemed to be getting fun. No matter how you looked at it, the beginning and end of this relationship were not in Lee Jun's hands, especially with someone like Chae-yu. He asked her if her mother-in-law was an important person to her. Lee Jun answered yes, so he had to make a good impression on her mother. He immediately apologized to the Chu family. Lee Jun said he used to be a kind and polite person. He affirmed that maybe he just needed some time to become the husband and son she remembered. But it was okay, it wouldn't take long. He said the doctor also said it wouldn't be too difficult because he really wanted to recover normally as soon as possible. Hearing recover normally, Lee Jun felt uneasy. She nervously advised him not to rush. If you recover too fast, no one here will survive, you know. Rushing will cause damage to your body. No, just continue as you are now. She kept calling his full name, Quan Chu the this, Quan Chu the that. This made him curious. He leaned down and coldly asked why she kept calling his full name. He asked her to stop calling him that. He didn't want her to treat him like a stranger. He wants you to call him Chae-yu, not Quan Chu-yu. He was someone who had only one thing on his mind, your face. All he knew was that appearance, and he didn't want you to slip away from him. He also didn't want to become a bad husband. Lee Jun's heart was pounding wildly. She felt afraid of Chae-yu's icy fingertips. Fortunately, he wasn't holding a weapon to threaten her. The boss noticed her confusion. Right now, knowing exactly who Chae-yu really was would be very helpful. That night, Lee Jun returned to her room and lay face down on the bed. Today was so long. She was tired of having to find ways to avoid him all day because he kept clinging to her and wouldn't leave her alone. Chu wanted to be by her side all of the time, but she had to lie and say she needed some privacy, using the excuse of having to work. If he regained his memory of that day, the same situation might happen again. She didn't dare imagine further, but that fear made her use herself first. She didn't know if she could get through the night safely. After what the doctor said, everything felt like an imposition. She kept thinking about it, but why did she have to listen to the doctor? The contract she signed was simply to take care of Chu. Until they caught the culprit, she had no intention of losing control over her own life. The question was whether Chu could sleep peacefully on his own or not. At first, she planned to lock the door on the second floor with a lock that couldn't be opened from the inside to stop him from going downstairs, but the door had been pried open. Moreover, upstairs, Chu was doing push-ups to train his body so he wouldn't weaken. She observed everything clearly. He should have just woken up, so why had he recovered so quickly? Although he looked like an empty shell on the outside inside, he was a murderer. The one who buries the love for someone else. If she truly considered him her husband, she didn't know how much she could control him. She just hoped he would sleep peacefully and not come downstairs. She didn't want him to come looking for her. Just then there was a knock on the door. Chu called her name and told her to open the door. She quickly covered herself with the blanket. He tried to turn the doorknob and she prayed he would go back to his room. He didn't get a response and eventually left. Lee Sun heard her footsteps and wondered if he had really gone. To be sure, she quietly moved closer to the door. Then Chu's voice rang out asking if she really thought he had left. That sentence startled her, and she stepped back fearfully, covering her mouth tightly with her hand. Chu didn't want her to leave. He knew it was her. He recognized the scent of wet grass still on her clothes. Even outside the door, he could smell it. He started pounding hard on the door. Without her, he didn't know who he was. Even with hands and feet, Chu still felt unreal. He wondered if he was human or if it was all just a dream. He didn't know if he was crazy. He wanted Lee Sun to give him an answer. Chu wanted her to tell him about the past, even if it was an ordinary story. It would give him some hope that he truly existed. Chu's heavy breathing echoed. He was in pain. If he wanted, he could easily break down the door, but in this confused state, he couldn't. She always said he was a cute guy, gentle, sweet, friendly. All those lies she told were what held Chu back. He didn't know what this feeling was. After thinking for a while, she finally called his name. Chu looked up, listening. The eyes of this killer, the artist who painted them so chillingly, captured the exact numbness inside. She said she was currently showering and completely naked. A little shampoo got into her eyes. She softly said this wasn't the right time to recall old stories. The space suddenly fell silent. Chu understood she was right. He nodded, saying, "I get it." Then he went upstairs to shower. She thought she had control over Chu, but before leaving, he turned back and told Li Jong that he was okay. After saying that, he left without another word. That night, she still had nightmares in her sleep. Chu from 2 years ago wore black clothes, holding a weapon as if harassing her. And the next day, Chu fell into a deep sleep again. Lee Sun told the boss not to get too close or he might wake up. The boss asked her directly if Chu chased her because she secretly watched him while he was showering. Lee Sun immediately said no. She asked the boss to leave so as not to wake him. But after that night, Chu slept for a whole week. There were a few episodes of chaos that damaged his nerves, but then everything quickly became hazy, like a dream, and then returned to normal. Anyway, she had regained her peaceful life. She just hoped everything would pass like that, or at least that's what she thought. Lee Sun's father began to dream within a dream. I saw her writing bitter words about herself. "I am the child nobody wanted. I was born by mistake. I am nothing but suffering," and many other things. Tears streamed down as she tried to wipe them away, but the pile of papers had grown into a tower that collapsed, falling onto Lee Jong. She woke up with a start, reaching up to the ceiling. It was just a nightmare. But in reality, something had happened that day. Mrs. Chu entered the room to check on her. Lee Sun said she just had a nightmare and apologized for dozing off. The boss told her not to worry, work wasn't busy today, so she could rest. Yet Lee Sun wanted to work. She wanted to go check on the tree in front of the restaurant. She was worried it would wither. Boss Lai reminded her that dealing with the restaurant owner wasn't easy. In the end, it was just arguing, but Lee Jong didn't care. She went to wash her face, looked in the mirror. Today was like any other day. When she arrived at the restaurant, the owner greeted guests, but immediately kicked Lee Sun out as soon as he saw her. He didn't want to talk. Still, Lee Sun scolded him for purposely letting the tree in front of the door die. Last time, he secretly poured herbicide, and this time he watered it with seawater. She knew because the soil tasted salty. The owner didn't care about the soil's taste or whether the tree lived or died. But since customers were inside ordering, he pushed Lee Jong outside. He didn't want her to sabotage the business just because of a tree. He knew what happened to the school principal when construction materials were dumped on his tree, and he wouldn't let her cause the same fate for his shop. Yes, Lee Sun understood that well, but if she walked away now, who would take care of it? Who would save this tree? She knew he wanted it gone just because it blocked the restaurant sign. To people, probably the sign was more important than the tree. Life has always been like that. Only humans decide who lives and who doesn't. But not trees. She said this while clenching her fists. If the tree has taken root, that's reason enough to live alongside it. Yet people only look for ways to kill it. She couldn't understand why he had to do that. At night, Lee Sun no longer remembered how many years it had been since she had a full day. She once thought she was okay, maybe because she hadn't slept well for so long. A quiet week passed without anything happening, just as she wished, and it was no surprise that Chu slept very peacefully. Perhaps that's why during that short time all kinds of sounds had echoed. So tonight, realizing the silence around him felt even stranger. But when Che-Yu woke up, she had no time to think about her own issues. Thinking like that wouldn't do any good. She didn't even understand why she thought that way. She was gradually becoming addicted to that thrill. Suddenly, she heard a noise upstairs. She immediately went up and opened the door to see what was going on. She thought the sound must have come from somewhere else. She believed that, but the truth was Che-Yu was crying. He was begging someone to leave quickly, and she couldn't believe he was crying. Maybe he was having a nightmare. Surely in his dream he was still chasing his victims. Maybe that's the price for all the bad things he had done. But Che-Yu yelled, "Hide me." It seems she was wrong. Her boss had warned her to beware of this wild man. But right now he looked more like a deer being chased by hunters. Bali Sion wiped her tears with her shirt, softly told him not to cry anymore. He had to wipe his own tears. Crying was useless because no one would listen. Only trees and flowers could be eternal friends. She muttered to herself that today she tried testing the soil under a tree root. It tasted salty. Soil shouldn't be like that. Exactly like the saltiness in his tears. Who hurt him this badly? That scene made her think of the tree in front of the restaurant. A bad feeling crept inside her. Maybe that's why he woke up a week ago and then never fully recovered. Maybe only by sleeping next to her would he have some hope of waking up. Then she gently laid down beside him. She must be possessed or something because normally she's really scared. She lay on her side facing him. Her gaze was sad. Today was a day she wanted to cry. Everything had been bottled up inside her for a long time. An innocent, hard-working girl with a kind heart was enduring such injustice. The next morning, Chu opened his eyes. His gaze drifted up to the ceiling. He wondered how long he had been asleep. He was surprised to see Lee Jong beside him. He had slept next to her since last night. and knowing she was always there made him happy in this moment. The only thing he was sure of was that Lee Xian was a plant doctor and his wife. The only face left in his memory was hers. He began to recall a few things. The first time he saw her, even though she insisted she was his wife, he still couldn't stop himself from looking away. But he didn't understand why he looked at her that way. Her expression back then was confused and scared. It didn't look like a wife's face when her husband wakes up. She didn't have a wedding ring mark. There wasn't a single photo of them together in the house. She didn't even open the door to welcome him. He wanted to ask why she cared for him until he recovered, if she no longer wanted to keep him. Just then Lee Xian opened her eyes. Che-yu softly asked if she slept well. She didn't know that he was already awake. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. He asked Li Zhang how long he had slept. She replied about 8 days. Chu was now certain of one thing. Without her, he wouldn't have woken up. She might not fully understand, maybe just think it's a spiritual matter. But he realized it when they slept side by side. He wanted to be with her every night, and he had no intention of letting her leave him. He declared that from now on he would sleep in Leon's room. Sunshine filtered through the window slats. The space suddenly felt unusually warm. Then Leon began preparing for the botanical garden presentation. All the directors of the local hospitals would attend. Leon brought her treatment diary in case of emergencies. Screw's hospital had few cases but never let a single plant die. As a doctor, she had to be the hospital's pride. But it wasn't just the two of them attending. Lee Xian turned around and noticed Che-yu looked completely different. He looked very youthful, very stylish, and all that. His personality had also changed. His new haircut was done by Mrs. Chu. His clothes were bought by her too. He went out to express his gratitude for his mother-in-law's kindness. Now things would get complicated if they went out together. It would be hard to lie that they were husband and wife. And just a small trigger from outside could bring back his memories. Somehow she had to stop that from happening. She asked Che-yu if he wanted to rest today, worried something might happen. That was Che-yu's question back. Li Yan replied no, but deep down she knew the truth was exactly that. There would be a lot of trouble. He wondered why she needed an excuse so quickly. Doubt briefly flashed in his eyes. Li Xian said it was dangerous out there. He was dissatisfied and asked what was dangerous. What a strange thing to say, but she said it was especially dangerous for him. She bowed her head to avoid his gaze. Bashfully answered because he was too attractive. Wrong move, super handsome. He didn't take that well. And she yelled out, "You're so handsome," as if to confirm her point. No one found that convincing. The boss laughed sarcastically while he stayed silent like a clam. She continued to explain to reinforce her reason. If he went with her, the old guys in the industry, there would definitely be jealous to see such a young, handsome guy like a celebrity at the conference. She can't let him go along in any way. After saying that, she thought she might have convinced him. But when she looked over, she saw his face turn red. "So you plan to hide this from me just because I'm too attractive? Is that how you see it?" "Yes." Li Xian immediately replied, "That's right. Anyway, I still want you to stay home. I want to keep you all to myself. Why are you questioning me?" Li Xian didn't know how to answer, but once said she couldn't deny it, because they were originally husband and wife just separated after the accident. Of course, she affirmed she wanted to keep him all to herself, because he's too handsome. So handsome that he should be executed. Why live to suffer? Of course, the female lead never said that I made that up. That only made his face blush even more. He then said, "If that's the case, you also shouldn't go out." He reassured her not to worry. Even if he goes out, he will follow her every word and obey her. For some reason, this situation gradually became strange. Every time Chu spoke, Leon was left speechless. Heaven won't accept it, and earth must yield. The boss waved and called both of them to start moving. And finally, their first trip together began. They went to attend the Wadom project presentation. The directors there immediately recognized the presence of the Spruce Hospital member. They began criticizing Li Zhan about her upcoming marriage, saying she wasn't likable and had no strengths. They mocked that Mrs. Chujo was an old withered tree and the other was an immortal flower. But Li Xian never liked places like this. In this industry, it's all middle-aged men around 50 to 60 years old with power. When a woman attends, they only notice her gender, not her ability. He teased you by grabbing her hand and asking if she wanted an eye or a mouth. She was startled when he grabbed her hand so tightly. Then he said, "Could you say something easier to understand?" He quietly said he noticed the men here kept talking when they saw her. He asked if she wanted him to shut their mouths or poke their eyes. If he didn't say it, he would just silently protect his beloved girlfriend. Such a cool assassin-style man. Li Xian imagined the worst-case scenario and feared the incident would be on the news. She couldn't let him do that. She didn't want to hear him say such things anymore. She made him promise. Chu said he tried to act gently. Didn't he do well already? She looked him straight in the eyes. His eyes were clearer now, but all she saw in them was blind faith and stupidity. But strangely, she didn't feel afraid of this man at all. She reminded him of his promise before they started walking. He said yes. He promised to do everything she allowed. Chu smiled brightly. His eyes and expression had completely changed. The entire room heard the couple's promise. All eyes turned to them. Actually, Chu's presence drew even more attention. The press conference was about to start. Hospital representatives had to enter the conference room. At this moment, Lion let go of his hand. She said she would be right back. Both wished her luck. As she walked away, she felt her hand burning hot. It seemed her body temperature had changed. The Wadham project would be Korea's largest botanical garden built at Wadham. It would have a tropical dome park, outdoor ecological park, artificial waterfall, natural forest. A unique masterpiece was taking shape, but this shocked everyone. The simulation was already completed. From what was seen, this would be the most beautiful botanical garden in Korea. All winning hospitals would get top clients. One person couldn't believe they were even invited to join. But what's difficult, this must be a task for the best doctors. A Wadham gathering rare and most expensive plants in the world. They couldn't just casually choose representatives without knowing if they were frauds or not. A representative stood up to announce that the selection would be held as a competition, and the entire process would be recorded to be included in the project's promotional video. So they had to remember that there would be a film crew constantly following them. The winning hospital would sign a 15-year contract with Wadham. It was like discovering a gold mine. Everyone was ready to participate. At the end of the meeting, Mrs. Chu asked if she intended to join. This was a big opportunity, and Lee Yan said that everything would be recorded by cameras. Chu asked if she was afraid of the cameras. She replied that she just wanted to live quietly. She didn't want awkward scenes to be recorded. Suddenly, someone called her. It was Do-gi, Mr. John, director of SEO East Hospital. He happily said he was honored to see her again. This man was her former superior before she came to Spruce Hospital, and she had no good relationship with the guy wearing glasses. He was Hwang Do-jun Do-gyo, Mr. John's favorite student. He never thought the two would meet again. The director said they used to be friends long ago. From now on, they had to get along like before. She couldn't believe he said that with that smile. Many years ago, when she was still an intern under Mr. John's guidance, she had just graduated from university and was at the lowest position. You could say the working environment at that time was very suffocating. But to open a hospital, she had to endure hours of practice, so she gritted her teeth and tolerated it. What bothered her most was Hwang Do-jun's constant harassment. He always followed her, staring and judging her with cruel words. When she couldn't stand it anymore, she reported him to the director. But the result was she was immediately fired. The director didn't stand on her side at all. He even acted as if nothing had happened. Back to the present director, Do-gi. Mr. Cho took Mrs. Chu away. She watched Mrs. Chu helplessly. The man with glasses stared at her and reached out to say something. But Chu immediately pulled her to sit next to him to prevent him from touching her. A rather unexpected action. He realized she was very tense. He asked her who the creepy guy with glasses was. Surely someone he didn't remember. She replied that he was her former intern friend. Chu didn't know him, so he didn't need to worry. Do-jun pressed on, asking who the man beside her was. Seeing this, Chu wanted her to introduce. Both pressured her to speak immediately. Too much pressure fell on the main character's shoulders. With no other choice, she told Cho-jun that the man lived with her. In Ju-jun's eyes, it was hard to believe she had married him. Lee Seon deliberately said so, thinking that living together was more acceptable than marriage. But in the end, it still turned out like this. Chu saw she was worried and panicked. He whispered that she just needed to nod. Seeing no reaction, Chu gently pressed her side to urge her to comply. She was embarrassed, but finally did it. And Chu introduced himself as her husband. That stunned Cho-jun. It was really ridiculous. Lee Seon was not that type of person. She was not the kind of girl to date someone like that. First of all, she did not like being around others. Who would understand a woman who visits plants every night, quietly fertilizing them at home on weekends? No one could accept that. Do-jun still didn't change. He had uttered insulting words happily whenever she differed slightly from the norm. And that was what she hated most. Lee Yan frankly said they had never been friends. It had been many years since she left the hospital, and as you see, she got married and opened a hospital to live well. Her voice was angry and sharp, asking if he still thought she was someone he could easily look down on. That made him angry. Do-jun harshly demanded she show the marriage certificate to prove the man was really her husband. I've tolerated you for a long time. You know that creepy guy with glasses harassing since university lives his own life, and no one cares yet. Now he's upset and annoyed over someone unrelated. What does it affect your family if they get married successfully? It's even more unreasonable to demand a marriage certificate as proof. Is there really a person like you in this world, Leon? Gaping at his absurdity, but just then Che-yu spoke up. The clear look in his eyes had disappeared. He returned to his usual deadly version. He only asked Dojun one thing: don't call his wife by her name or he'll make him disappear. Those words truly shocked everyone. She was sweating bullets. Che-yu raised his hand to threaten Jotono, but Lee Xian immediately stopped him. She panicked, saying both were busy now, so they'd have to deal with it later. Then both quickly walked out of the building. Jo-jun reached out, still stunned, wondering why he suddenly said he would log himself out. When they stepped outside the building, she was panting from exhaustion. He approached and asked if she was okay. She replied she was fine, just quite shocked to hear him say he wanted to send that guy with glasses to sell salt. Che-yu hurriedly apologized to Li Yan, telling him not to apologize. She was just surprised. This was the first time she had heard such words. Che-yu said he couldn't stand it whenever that bastard called her by her name directly. His eyes flared up. He had to hold himself back hard to resist the urge to rip that guy's mouth apart. People like that should be isolated from society. So Li Yan now understood that although he appeared calm, he seemed always on the edge of breaking limits. Maybe because he was extremely sensitive to her mood. Whenever she was upset, he immediately felt it. The three of them went home in silence, heavy-hearted, but Li Yan understood her emotions had shifted directly to Chu. If she let herself get unsettled in front of him, it would be like sending him a signal to lose his temper. So instead of trying to control Chu, she had to learn to stay strong and calm in front of this man. After all, she was the one holding the leash of a wild dog and had to be brave enough to keep hold of it. Mrs. Chu asked if she intended to participate. She said yes. She wanted to make Dongsail Hospital bow down. But as Li Zhong said, she hated cameras. That's true, but this time she wanted to try. Actually, she still disliked being in front of the lens, but this time she wanted to crush Dongsail Hospital's pride even more. That was also part of becoming stronger. The two saw the boss lady off. She told them to rest and relax their minds. Leon felt exhausted. Che-yu shyly apologized to his wife, feeling he hadn't helped much for Lion Hospital. She told him not to worry too much. Brother, past, present, or future, just be obedient like a day, and you've already helped the hospital a lot. But his expression briefly turned sad. He felt guilty for feeling useless. Seeing that she opened her mouth to ask him for something, his eyes lit up like he was eager to be commanded by her. But she suddenly realized she was just digging a hole to bury herself in. She shyly said from now on there should only be good and happy things. They looked at each other and exchanged warm glances. It seemed the atmosphere between them had changed. Best for both of you to go to sleep. I'll shower first and then get in bed. Che-yu asked if she wanted him to help with the bath. She froze for a moment, then immediately said no. Che-yu was surprised and asked why his wife looked so shocked. She said she was very conservative. Since childhood, she was taught that even sitting close to a boy after age 7 was hard to accept. It sounded strange, but she was raised that way. Che-yu asked, what about her husband? Was he included in that? Li Yan replied, marriage wasn't a free pass to do whatever you want. Then how is it? He asked. Teach me, I've forgotten a lot. She suddenly felt if she kept avoiding it, she'd lose her confidence. She had ignored him for a whole week, not waking him up, as if he didn't really need it, or maybe she was mistaken. It seemed like at moments like this, Chu's intelligence became sharper. She was afraid she'd be swept away. He slipped 2 fingers into his pants pocket, leaned forward, hiding his gaze, waiting for her answer. Leon bashfully turned away shyly, saying that him bathing her was a bit too much. But he found this very strange. He said that after all, they had slept together before and done much more intense things, but this was just bathing. Hearing this, her face turned bright red and she fell silent. This part contains language unsuitable for the platform, so I will soften and euphemize it a lot. He pondered deeply, thinking perhaps the reason his wife hadn't enjoyed that aspect was due to some unspeakable reasons. Maybe they should try to change that. Her face went blank. He was using her own previous words to persuade her. This time, he wasn't going to give up easily. Li-san had no choice but to accept. I can only help you relax a little, nothing more. Che-yu smiled slyly with satisfaction. She stepped into the bathroom, telling herself to stay calm. At least that concern made her feel better than having to endure everything alone. When Che-yu entered, she tensed slightly. He sat down gently and rubbed her back, then asked, do you feel more comfortable now? She said shyly. Yeah, a little relieved. His words and smile gradually lost their humanity. Then he said he would only help a little so she would ask him again next time. He chuckled softly. Lee Sion blushed, feeling even more embarrassed. She thought Che-yu would be surprised by this closeness, but instead he seemed calm, as if enjoying it. Looking at her, he softly said, "You're always lovely, always thinking of others." She blushed, puzzled, why he didn't seem awkward. For a moment she thought if this were the old Che-yu, maybe he would be more assertive in this closeness, but it remained just imagination. She quickly pulled him back to reality and handed him a towel. At that moment, Chu noticed a faint scar on her back. Li Yan paused, then remembered it was from an accident. Because she rarely looked in the mirror, she had forgotten about it. He asked her about the scar. She tried to avoid it, saying it was nothing, just an old story. But why did she say that? Maybe she didn't want to talk about it. Summoning all her courage, Chu gently asked if the injury was caused by her family. Li Yan was silent. He blurted out that her family must have been cruel. She hurriedly defended them, saying they must have had reasons. Maybe they loved her, and that's why they punished her harshly, leaving those scars. He moved closer, and she tried to reassure herself that maybe it was a form of love. When love is too much, it can lead to excessive control, even violence. That love comes with selfishness and possessiveness. Shu recalled that since he woke up, every time he tried to get close to Li Yan, she reacted cautiously, as if always harboring resentment toward intimacy. Li Xian sighed softly. Love can quickly turn into resentment. Humans are different from plants. They cannot love unconditionally. Once they have tasted bitterness, it's hard to accept it. And now everything gradually became clear. He slowly understood why she trembled when facing him. That could mean in their marriage, he had also caused terrible things to her. Li Yan urged him to quickly give her the towel. Chu seemed not to notice her words, focusing only on the scar on her back. He softly said it looked very painful. He thought if it was careless, Li Yan's back could have been torn wide open. Then he continued rubbing her back, but only for today. He wanted them both to be comfortable while he helped her bathe. And Li Yan didn't understand what kind of comfort he meant while bathing. Chu gently massaged his wife's back with his fingers. She hurriedly told him to wait a moment, but Chu ignored her and pressed his fingers into the middle of her spine. But deep down, she admitted the feeling was wonderful. Yet at the same time, the warmth from his palm made her hesitate. What exactly was this massage should be firm and even painful? But she remembered when Chu asked about the scar on her back. He must have been trying to be gentle so as not to hurt her. This was the first time someone asked her that question. Until now, everyone assumed the wounds on her body were normal. They whispered it was no surprise she ended up like this. But some people can't understand how the family that raised her ended up like this. There are also those who admire that family because not everyone is willing to take in an abandoned girl. That's exactly how she lived her whole life. In that moment, just before he realized she was trying to hold back tears so she wouldn't cry, he asked what she had been through, but does it matter that she was about to cry? Do the scars on her body really matter after all? She scooped up some soap bubbles from the bathtub and flicked them right into Cho's face. Cho anxiously asked if she was okay if it stung her eyes. Just splashing water on the face. Who splashes soap full of chemicals into someone's eyes, nose and mouth like that? Foolish, she replied that she was fine. Still, Cho used some water to rinse the bubbles off her face. This was too much for Li Jian to bear. Chu held out his hand, telling her to give him her hand so he could wipe it clean. After bathing, they both got into bed together. Her limbs felt relaxed. Cho asked if she was sleepy yet. Sharing a bed turned out to be no big deal. She wished him good night. Cho replied the same. The warmth of Cho's side of the bed made her feel at ease. Even though before this, he was extremely frightening to her. Would the first days with Cho from morning to night continue like this? Awkward, but not as bad as she had thought. But then remembering they were sleeping in the same bed, she suddenly jumped up and shouted, startling Cho. She couldn't believe she felt comfortable. Was she crazy? This man had once tried to send her away to her grandparents. She even used a chainsaw to chop right at his head. She had seen with her own eyes that he was dangerous, that he was terrifying. It's just that now he has amnesia. Yet Cho, with an innocent face, gently asked Li Yan, "What's wrong with you? Did your back hurt where I touched earlier?" This man was clearly very different from what she had imagined. Now he took the hit instead of delivering it. She couldn't understand why she hesitated like that. She must not let her guard down, reminding herself to recall the scenes from 2 years ago. Chu didn't understand what was wrong with her. He grabbed her hand and asked what she was doing. He begged her not to hurt herself. He asked why she suddenly acted like that when she had been lying quietly before. Was she feeling uncomfortable? Li Yon knew the problem was in Cho's eyes and warm voice. From the start, she shouldn't have looked or listened. Cho told her to look him straight in the eyes and stay calm, then talk with him. Okay? She didn't answer or say a word, just pulled her hand away from him. seeing that Cho asked if she had never been angry at anyone before. Maybe that's why she wasn't afraid at all. He looked terrifying, the old man, but never afraid of anything, Grandpa. Only by recalling and explaining everything that happened could the trauma from that night be lifted. He gently lifted her chin and moved closer. Before she could understand what he intended, she felt confused, disoriented. She froze. He advanced and kissed her neck like a vampire sucking blood. He bit hard on her neck. Li Yan struggled, demanding he let go because he was hurting her. She tried to endure, but eventually cried out loudly. She wanted Cho to stop repeatedly calling his name and asking him to stop. She pushed him away, but he didn't listen. She asked why he was acting like this. He had always listened when she told him to stop before. Chu grew more and more agitated. An unclear restlessness surged up. He seemed to be craving something but couldn't find satisfaction. The craving grew more intense. She started trembling weakly, asking Cho if he had regained his memory yet. Only then did he realize he had acted on instinct without considering her feelings. Li Xian asked him directly if he did that because he remembered everything. Hearing that sweat drip down Cho, her terrified eyes made him feel like a monster. Maybe this is the true nature of Chu from before. Actually, I never recovered my memory. It was just a moment when I lost control. I'm sorry, Li John, I truly regret it. That's why I decided to sleep in a different room tonight to punish myself. I said it doesn't matter if it's for a month or two. Just leave me like this until you feel comfortable again. Please don't wake me up until then. Li Yan didn't fully understand and hurriedly called out, wait. But Chu had already decided to leave the room. Li Yan truly didn't know what to do. She could only call after him. Wait, Chu told her to stay still. In his eyes, there seemed to be a tear of regret shining. He said if he stayed near her now, he was afraid he would lose control again like before. So he hoped she would stay where she was. She didn't know how to respond. He turned and went down to the first floor. She stood upstairs and shouted down, saying if he slept alone, he might not wake up for a long time. No, he should sleep on the second floor with her. Otherwise, when she's not with anyone, she will wake him up. Chu slammed the door shut. Clearly, that was what he wanted. Then Chu fell into a deep sleep for the third time. One morning, a child walking through the neighborhood mumbled about insect mating, according to the insect encyclopedia he had read. The gender of insects is usually hard to distinguish with the naked eye. However, if the egg-laying tube extends from the female's tail, it's easy to recognize. The sounds humans hear are actually noises made by the males to court the females. Some species even force the female to eat part of their body to gain favor. The boy didn't know that behind him, someone else was quietly watching. Meanwhile, Leon reminded her boss to pay attention. The first competition of the Wado project had been announced. Miss Chuja curiously asked what kind of competition it would be. She had heard the hospital representative complained about some parts of the project. But Leon said it was a tree trimming contest. Miss Chuja thought it was too simple. It was no different from a preliminary test. Even a child could do it. Leon replied that this challenge was a bit different from what her boss thought. The trees were up to 30 meters tall and ladders were forbidden. That meant they had to climb by themselves. At first, both laughed at this strange test. But then Miss Chuha got angry thinking they were mocking her. 30 meters is like a 10-story building. Climbing that high is basically courting death. She shouted angrily that she would definitely file a complaint. Balian gently hugged her waist, advising her to calm down first. Everyone knows that as a tree doctor, you often have to climb to operate. It's a quiet job that requires great physical strength. Miss Chuja frowned. Still climbing up to 30 meters to 10 trees was unacceptable, especially with ladders forbidden. Leon understood that well. Meanwhile, the boy from earlier was curious about what was behind that door. He cautiously peeked inside. It turned out to be Li San's room. Inside, Chu was sound asleep on the bed. Sunlight shone on his face. The child looked closely. It was the first time he had seen a male in this hospital. Kids called men males. I'm translating it that way based on context. He sneaked closer to the bed and pulled off the blanket covering him. The boy mumbled, "This male has a head, body, and legs, a complete body with 2 arms and 2 legs. The standout feature was his large hands and feet sticking out beyond the bed's edge, along with a tall nose. The nose grew from his forehead. This male's chest was huge." Just then, Leon entered and immediately shouted at the boy to stop. The boy called her director. Leon asked when he had arrived. If he planned to come, he should have informed her first. But now that he's here, she told him to come with her. Staying in that room is very dangerous. But before leaving, Lee Gilbeck told her that this person is a rare species, a male that he had never encountered before. The man sleeping there is truly astonishingly handsome. He looks healthy and strong, seems to have the ability to hunt. A headache with that old man is exactly right. Able to hunt and eat a live chicken raw. We know Gilbert is only 7 years old and is the hospital's unofficial entomologist. The boy wasn't properly cared for at home, so he often came to the hospital. Through Gilbert's lens, humans are like insects with males and females. Leon said that man wasn't normal. He is very dangerous. Gilbert believes that strong men like him are inherently dangerous. When she opened the curtain, she suddenly panicked, seeing Cho-jun secretly watching her through the window. She was terrified. Honestly, encountering perverts who sneak and stalk like this is a horrifying nightmare for women. She shouted, asking what he was doing here. He ignored the question and instead asked why a kid like that was allowed inside the house. Gilbert said that this male, meaning Do-jun, has a belly and both head and legs. Its shape is really strange, not beautiful at all. With 2 arms and 2 legs, it would be hard to survive. Like it's stuck outside the window. Its eyes are also very unusual. Looks both perverted and useless. Do-jun didn't understand what was wrong with this kid's mind. The boy's words offended him. Leon told Gilbert to stay there and eat some candy while she handled that filthy insect. Gilbert agreed because he always keeps his promises. Today, Lee Jong complained to Cho-jun that he dared to barge into someone else's home. If he didn't leave immediately, she would call the police. Do-jun curiously asked if that boy was her son. Lee Seon felt deeply offended. He still believed she couldn't have a family or live the way she wanted. And she challenged him. He said that boy was his child. He couldn't believe she could have a child with another man. He also asked if she disappeared from Dongseol Hospital because of that child. And Lee Yan replied that she didn't disappear but was fired by Director S.A. Because of Do-jun, he immediately said that was nonsense. With all the care he gave her, she couldn't possibly have time to see another man. No way he wouldn't notice that. How that child was born? How could it be? That's impossible. Do-jun, almost drunk, demanded Lee Zeon go immediately with him to the local office to show him the blood relationship certificate. He wouldn't believe it until he saw it with his own eyes. Look at this crazy guy, really frustrating. I'm so scared of men like this. She took out her phone and called the police, reporting that a stalker had broken into her house. Do-jun asked what she was doing, and Lee Yoon told the police that the harasser might have been drinking, talking nonsense and causing trouble. She asked them to come quickly. He pointed at her and demanded she not treat him like a criminal. She was the one making a big deal while everything would end immediately if she gave him the certificate. That attitude of his is what really drives people crazy. What does it have to do with your house that she has to give birth certificates and prove blood relations? Secondly, Lee Seon knew why Jo-jun had been persistently clinging to her all these years wasn't because he loved her. After she was kicked out of Dong Seo Hospital, Jo-jun surely tried to flirt with various women, but ultimately failed and was abandoned. So when he met her again after all that time, he thought she was easy. But she was the one who witnessed a person being buried alive and nearly lost her life. She had to live with a murderer for 2 years. So why is she still afraid of a twisted pervert like Dojo now? She casually scooped up a handful of dirt, raised her eyes, and threatened to throw it at him. Her voice hardened. I've lived quietly and endured for too long. Do I look easy to bully and take advantage of? Now, if you're smart, stay out of here. From now on, stay away from my life. This is your only warning. And now you have a scary husband. He needs to understand that. His temper isn't something to take lightly. You've experienced it yourself. Your husband is extremely difficult. As for Do-jun, he's only good at greetings. But if he keeps approaching her like that, her husband will definitely not let it go. After saying that, she slammed the door in front of Jun. Jun no longer recognized the woman he once knew. The old Lee Seon was somewhat lonely, easily captivated by a submissive woman. Could the problem be that he hadn't been by her side for a while? Just one moment of taking his eyes off Lee Jun was his failure. But things wouldn't stop there. Do-jun swore he would make her submit once again. From that day on, Do-jun's harassment began at a more dangerous level. A few days passed and the police came to Lee Jong-suk's house. The officer asked if she was calling again to file another complaint. Lee Seon's reaction confirmed it, but she was a bit embarrassed because this wasn't the first time she knew the police would just see it as a coincidence. But how can it be called a coincidence when she encounters the same person 3 times a day, even every day? Do-jun's harassment was continuous. But the officer said that since no concrete harm had occurred, they couldn't forbid Do-jun from being around there. Lee Seon questioned that every morning Do-jun left red roses at her door. The officer replied that at that time Do-jun was still at work, so there was no reason to waste time bringing flowers to her house. They couldn't do anything to help her at the moment. Lee Seon trembled with anger, clenching her fists tightly, because the police had no courage at all to protect her. She was certain that man was always watching her. Clearly, he was the one who had harassed her in the past. But the officer answered that it was just a gut feeling, just like her first complaint on the mountain. Back then, she said she had witnessed a murder, but later they confirmed it was untrue. Moreover, there was no record of Do-jun ever harassing her. In short, her lawsuit was invalid. Finally, the police left. It was starting to get dark. She entered Chio's room and quietly looked at him for a long time while he slept. Mrs. Chusha told Lee John that if she planned to wake him, she should prepare thoroughly before doing so. At that moment, Leon turned and asked Mrs. Chusha what she meant. Mrs. Chusha replied that if she wanted to consider Cheo a murderer to the very end, then she should decisively turn her back and walk away. But if she wanted help from him, at least treat him like a human being. Right now, that guy was just an empty shell, nothing inside, and Chio was still the person she once saw back then. A complete stranger. Neither she nor he really knew. If you can't clearly distinguish, then don't wake him. That was what Mrs. Chusha meant. Lee Yan repeated that a murderer is always a murderer. She always reminded herself of that to keep her distance from Chio, because that way the guilt of deceiving someone who knew nothing about his past was somewhat eased. Her mind couldn't stop thinking, struggling internally. Even when making biofertilizer for the plants, she kept thinking about what Mrs. Chusha said. She thought that all along she wanted him to sleep and never wake up. Yet now when she needed Chio, she only took advantage of him. In her opinion, she was surprised by her own shallowness, but vaguely believed that if Chio really woke up, he would decisively end this situation. Maybe that was the faith she had in a murderer. On second thought, she wasn't trusting the murderer, but the person he was now. A stubborn Cheo who blindly gave all his heart to her. Lost in thought, she didn't realize it was already midnight. Yet thanks to that, it seemed she had rearranged part of her thoughts. Looking out the window, she saw someone watching her. It was Do-jun. His vile eyes behind the glass were watching her every move. Nausea and fear surged through her. The fear made her cover her mouth with her hand. What he was doing was truly disgusting. The pervert, Do-jun, whispered outside the glass door. "Look, Do-jun, you don't have a husband. I will be your husband." Any couple reaching this part would gradually be haunted like me. It's unimaginable to see a guy peeking through the door spying on you every day. It must be me. I really went all out on him. Chu suddenly woke up in his room, his eyes blurred with tears. It seemed like he just had a nightmare. He immediately looked around to see if anyone was beside him, and indeed someone was there. It was Lee John who was lying asleep next to him. She suddenly opened her eyes, realizing Chu had woken up. He asked her if she was okay while sleeping. Chu gently asked him if he had escaped punishment now, or wanted to continue punishing himself a little longer. His eyes were slightly red, the corner of his lips curling up softly. She was embarrassed by his words. His voice trembled slightly, thin as a thread. He asked, "Have you been okay all this time?" At that moment, Leon replied that Chu had been forced to sleep for 8 days straight. And during those 8 days, every night, he cried in torment because of nightmares. No one knew what he dreamed of that made him cry so miserably every time. Even though she thought about it a lot, she still let him wander through his nightmares. And now she felt guilty for leaving him alone. Chu saw the tears sparkling in her eyes and asked what was wrong if something had happened. She replied it was nothing, just a few annoying troubles. Actually, she wanted to bear everything on her own. She spoke while crying. She had taped the windows to catch fingerprints and even bought animal traps. But that guy kept coming in and out, really driving her crazy. Chu held her hand gently and said that everything was still okay. First, she needed to calm down and then slowly tell everything to find out who was sneaking in and disappearing. But Leon didn't understand why Chu was so gentle with him. He listened carefully to the whole story about the continuous harassment these past days. Leon must have endured a lot. Was that why she woke him up? Because she thought he could find a way. Why did Lee Seon think Chu must have thought she was shameless to ask for help after sleeping for 8 days? He hugged her tightly, comforting her after everything she had gone through. Everything will be fine. From now on, she could leave it all to her husband and rest. But what Lee Yan didn't know was Chu was secretly planning a cruel plan to torment Do-jun. His eyes were cold and deadly at this moment. He put his hand on her shoulder and said in a low voice, "From now on, leave everything to your husband. You just rest while you still can." Leon wanted to speak, but Chu stopped him. "You're too kind. Let me handle it. I will personally eliminate that disgusting insect once and for all." Leon quickly said she didn't mean that. She had already caught that insect herself. This stunned him. He never thought his wife could handle it on her own like that. They both stepped outside. The scene revealed Do-jun lying flat on the ground. His mouth was taped, mumbling. The way he was tied up was really secure. Lee Yan explained, "I learned this method in case I ever need to use it." Chu asked how she caught him. She replied, "I used pepper spray. People say it's very effective against that kind of insect. So I was prepared." Then she hit him with a Do-jun's shovel. The mumbling beneath the tape was more than one hit. He begged her to wait a moment, but Leon exploded all her anger and hit him repeatedly. Chu looked at his wife with pride. Leon just said, "It's nothing big. It's just that when I saw that disgusting bug lurking around the house, all my frustration suddenly burst out. That's why I did it." Chu smiled softly. "Even then you tied him up so carefully. Truly skillful." Lee John felt a bit embarrassed, but clearly both of them were very calm seeing Dojun tied up tightly. They were completely not normal. Neither Lee John nor Chu was in a stable mental state anymore. "From now on, I'll handle the rest. You go inside and rest." But before he did anything, Lee Sun wanted to say one thing. "I don't want you to be angry. It's just that Dojun keeps doubting our marriage. I just want to show him what kind of husband I have. I only ask you for one thing. Make sure June never appears in front of me again. I never wanted you to let him go sell salt or anything like that." A note for those who don't know, going to sell salt is a euphemism in Vietnamese meaning to die and go to the underworld. In Vietnamese, diem means salt. The second meaning comes from the French colonial era, when smuggling salt was highly profitable but extremely dangerous and could lead to death. But this sudden request made Mrs. Chu smile briefly. He asserted, "Of course I won't kill him." An unexpected but reasonable reaction. Maybe what Mrs. Chu said was partly true. Mrs. Chu now was like an empty vessel to be filled by the surrounding environment. From now on, Chu guessed that maybe she didn't want him to let him log out here. Maybe she wanted him to deal with him somewhere else, not here. Probably going back to grow people on the mountain again. Lee Sion once thought maybe he had changed, but no. He was still the same as before. She knew she couldn't trust this guy. She wanted him to promise not to deal with Dojun. He immediately replied, "Of course, just giving him a lesson to remember." She still wondered if it was okay to leave everything to Chu. Dojun did not want to be left alone with this guy at all. Chu's gaze looked threateningly at him. Seems like he was about to be done for. Those eyes looked like they could rip his liver out any time, but at the same time were empty, indifferent, and cold to the point of anger. Instinct told June this guy was very dangerous. He asked June where he lived. June didn't answer clearly. He asked again, this time clenching June's jaw to force him to talk. But then he realized June had tape over his mouth. So he had to guess. He grabbed his shirt and dragged him like an animal. Even with tape on his mouth, he tried to scream for him to let go. He said Chu wasn't even here yet, so where did this guy come from? How could he guess where the house was? It sounded like nonsense, but it seemed Chu was serious. He continued dragging the slimy pervert. "Do you want to know how I found your hideout?" That was Chu's first question. I stepped outside. I looked across the street at the opposite house and thought that if I slept with Li Zhong, the person living across would see everything. If I were you, I would buy that house across the street. No. So if you're going to do something, you should do it properly. So no one will ever recognize it. Acting like an idiot means you'll eventually get played. Better to live like a Rani than that. Dujun didn't expect to be read so easily. He looked up at Chu with pleading eyes. Jun's whole body trembled. He started being dragged into the house. No one outside could hear what was happening in here. Once he stepped through this door, he was 100% sure he'd disappear for good. He silently prayed someone would come to help. And then someone walked past the alley. His long-awaited savior finally appeared. He screamed for help. "Help me! This guy intends to deal with me." But why did the man just stand there? Clearly, he should know someone was about to die right now. The man raised his hand. Dujun thought he'd run to save him, but no. He silently stepped inside the house. Jun knew now he was completely doomed. No hope left. A terrible torture was about to begin. The door closed. The man who just entered his house didn't say a word. "Consider it all done." The man glanced at a bouquet of roses on the floor. Surprised, no, there are many photos of Chu and Li John pasted on the wall. This strange man seemed to know both of them well. One surprise after another. He placed a bag of food on the table. He reminded that it had been 2 years. It had been a long time since he last saw Chu this close. He briefly pondered, covering his mouth in excitement. He muttered that with Chu personally dealing with such a worthless trash, he must have lost his memory. His eyes were still watery. He seemed very moved to see Chu. He thought silently, but he should still know how to take care of his own hands. Does he know how much those fingers are worth? Well, even if our young master turned into a fool, he would still handle those pests neatly. Still, he thought it best to keep everything spotless to avoid suspicion. He started walking, a few steps, pulled back the curtain, and called Director Bellamy. "There are a few things to discuss." The scene shifts to the next morning. After a long sleep, Leon woke up. It had been a long time since she had such a peaceful sleep. She couldn't remember the last time she was awake. When was her dream in her own room, and why was she now in his room? She panicked as she recalled yesterday from Dojun following her to Chu, saying he would help her deal with that bastard. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, he was cutting flowers with scissors, preparing something special for Leon. Hearing footsteps nearby, Leon rushed in and called out loudly to Guchan. He was glad to see she was awake. He asked Leon if she slept well. Holding the bouquet, his bright smile needed no watering. He looked as beautiful as the flowers. She asked what Chu was doing. He said he was practicing flower arranging. He wanted to get back to work soon to quickly return to the daily rhythm of life. Leon was thoughtful. She felt uneasy seeing someone who didn't know the whole story, but believed everything she said and acted on it. Chu asked if she wanted him to tie her hair. She suddenly felt embarrassed because she hadn't noticed her hair was a bit messy. Chu gently touched her shoulder, saying he didn't mean anything by it. He just wanted to lightly touch her shoulder a little. He gently brushed a lock of hair that had fallen near her ear. He began neatly combing her hair while she let him do it. His hands were warm. Every time his fingers passed through it was slow and gentle. She suddenly remembered as a child sitting and watching her aunt comb her daughter's hair while she was just standing outside. She had never had anyone comb her hair, and this was the first time as an adult someone was doing it for her. Chu softly said that Dojun would never come near her again, so she didn't need to worry. She could feel at ease. Leon felt relieved hearing that. Chu tied her hair into a ponytail. He smoothed her hair, then told Leon it was done. The new hairstyle made her look amazing. She blushed at the compliment. He asked if she thought he wasn't being sincere. Perhaps Leon didn't realize just how beautiful she was. She didn't understand why she hid all that beauty beneath that stiff uniform. He complimented her natural face, saying it could drive all the men crazy. She blushed shyly, embarrassed, and unable to control her reactions. Leon's emotions felt like they were exploding inside. He asked again if she was very hungry. He thought she would be hungry upon waking, so he had prepared food for her. He also asked what she planned to do this afternoon. She replied she would take the chance to finish some unfinished housework. So Chu also helped by cleaning the windows. While he cleaned, Leon vacuumed the floor. He also helped move the cart elsewhere, then helped Leon hang bedsheets and clothes to dry. It felt comfortable, not just because Chu was there, but simply because working as a pair is always easier than alone. But she was genuinely surprised at how naturally skilled Chu was at housework. He was already that capable before losing his memory. Why couldn't she imagine how much of the old Chu still remained in him? Even he himself wasn't sure. She wanted everything to just continue as it was now. Everything was better this way. Chu looked at her from afar. He wondered if even when he was in a vegetative state, she still took such good care of him. Those hands full of affection, those eyes full of passion. But that devotion was hard to understand alongside her fear and distance whenever she was near him. He didn't understand the real reason. Chu softly called Leon's name. He plucked a flower. His fingers were strong but had no ill intent. He asked Leon if she would ever eaten flowers. She replied that she had tried a few times as a child. He wanted her to teach him how to eat them. He wanted to know how to eat them completely without leaving any behind. First, I want you to be my model. You can't believe he would ask you that, but you still do it. Quickly eat the petal. That's how you're taught to eat it. He just gently sucks his thumb a little. Chu asks Lee John if she can do it one more time. You have to know that inside the flower, there's a spot that releases a sweet taste. If you put your tongue in, you'll taste it all the way. And he wants you to try that way again one more time. He wants you to teach him again. Lee Sion doesn't know what this man is up to, but it's clear he's deliberately provoking her. Chu reaches out his hand. Lee Sion also extends her hand to catch the petals, and even though she understands his intention, she doesn't know why she can't refuse. When she puts the petal in her mouth, Chu looks at her with eyes so intense, it's like he can't resist the desire to do this with her. Li Yan gently sticks out her tongue to savor the sweetness melting on her lips, slowly enjoying the smooth flavors soaking into her tongue. While tasting, she softly makes a few little sounds. That makes Chu feel quite amused, but he can't hold back the mixed feelings between tenderness and something harder to describe. Seeing her enjoy the sweet scent and noticing his gaze, she bursts into flames. Quickly says, I don't usually do this. Clearly he's teasing her. That makes Chu curious and unable to hold back. He asks, so normally how do you do it? Lizion, both amused and a little embarrassed, explains that she usually just gently bites the tip so the flavor bursts out. At the same time, Chu nods, remembering the explanation. So you'll like to bite the tip of the candy. At this point, Leon nods and adds that doing so makes the flavor explode in the mouth, making the experience more intense. Stimulated by the description, Chu takes the flower from Leon's hand and tries it her way just to be sure he's only teasing. Leon watches him closely without looking away for a second. Her gaze follows every movement on Chu's lips as he slowly enjoys the flower, savoring the flavor. Between them, the atmosphere begins to change gradually, growing tense without them realizing. From then on, Chu notices a bit of the flower still clinging to Li Zhong's lip corner. Catching that look, she begins to doubt. She thinks he's just playing around with her, even though deep down she understands exactly what's happening. Yet something inside her stops her from reacting. Before she can handle the situation, Chu gently admits that he likes eating flowers by slowly peeling off each petal. Before Li Yan can respond, the scene changes. Chu pulls her inside the house without warning. He wraps his arms around her waist gently but firmly, pulling her close. In the blink of an eye, before she can react, their lips meet in a passionate, intense kiss. The tension between them rises. Chu's tongue lightly touches Li Jan's, causing her breath to become unsteady. Her mind grows hazy. She doesn't understand when the moment escalated to this point. Chu tightens his hold, pulling her even closer. The kiss grows hotter, her body trembling from the unexpected touch. Amid the dizziness, a forgotten memory suddenly surfaces, images of her mother and uncle, a face crossed out in a photo. A sudden sense of danger jolts her back to reality. That terrifying memory forces her to reclaim some clarity. She can't let this continue. Deep down, something tells her all this is wrong, that it should never have happened. She must break free. But Chu grips her tightly with a determination that overwhelms her. His hand holds her face firmly, not letting her pull away. The once passionate kiss now becomes fierce, almost desperate. He looks like he's turning into a beast. His fierce instincts rise once again. Probably just wants to put me to sleep again. Leon begins punching Chu's back in an effort to escape, but he still won't let go. Chu takes off his own shoes, and in doing so, Leon's slippers come off too. Neither notices they've slowly moved toward the room until Leon trips over an armchair. In a flash, they both fall onto the chair, but their lips don't part. Leon closes her eyes tightly, not daring to look directly at Chu. Her breath is rapid, short, as if the air is slowly being sucked out of her chest. Her mind swirled with chaotic thoughts, but her body remained still, refusing to obey. Chu's tongue went deeper and deeper, touching every small corner, flooding her with an uncontrollable pleasure. When he finally let go for her to breathe, Leon felt like she was about to faint. A current ran down her spine. Chu's low voice and warm breath whispered close to her ear. "If I said I want a private moment right now, how would your wife respond?" That question made her freeze. Her mind was too slow to process it. When did Korean become a language that left her speechless? In John's eyes, it seemed he only cared about one thing, planting a small seed in the deepest part of her belly. And Lee John immediately felt her body react. The danger of the situation was obvious, but her reason wavered between stepping back or giving in. Trembling, she whispered, "Haven't we been happy living like this, needing nothing else?" Chu smiled confidently. "That was before. Do you still see me the same way as before?" Lee Sion felt her cheeks flush. This shouldn't be happening. Chu looked at her intensely and said, "From now on, I promise to obediently follow your wishes." Li Yan knew this was the moment to react to refuse before things went too far. If she told him to stop, he would stop. But what if she didn't? Her will had always been strong. So why did she feel so powerless now? Chu held both her hands tightly, not letting go. A strange numbness ran through her body, and an alarm rang in her head. If she gave in, she would lose complete control. But before she could think further, Chu locked eyes with her and whispered, "Forget the past. Enjoy the present." Chu kept watching her. Li Yan couldn't look away from him either. But in that moment, she suddenly realized her upper body was bare under Chu's gaze. "Am I crazy?" she told herself to snap out of it. She could only survive a tiger like Chu if she kept her wits about her. She awkwardly said, "That's really hard for me." Then he suddenly stopped. "Hard why?" If Chu knew the truth, maybe he wouldn't want anything to do with me. His gaze drifted downward. Chu softly replied, "I don't think so." Back then, Li San told her she was a fool who didn't understand any of it. He asked what she meant by that. She said it was because of the wooden plank. Li Xian asked if he had ever heard of it. "You are that famous plank," as she had said. Because their bodies don't match, it would be painful. She was born as a plank, so throughout the process, she only laid still, feeling lost from start to finish. She asked Chu if he wasn't tired of hearing her say that. Chu smiled. "That sounds interesting." She asked if he was serious. Chu replied, "No, I'm just curious how long you can avoid this." Then he skillfully lifted her armpits to help her sit up. He wanted her to be more honest with him from now on, and he also wanted to know if they really got married for love. That question made her extremely tense, as if he doubted their relationship. He smiled and gently pulled her shirt down. He said Lee Sion should rest. He would go outside to finish cleaning the yard. But before leaving, he reminded her that next time he would ask the same question again. She should prepare the most appropriate answer for herself. Chu stepped outside and closed the door. She was speechless. A tired, restless sigh escaped her lips. She had just barely escaped. Thinking back, she never imagined she could be deeply attached to someone. She also couldn't imagine that would ever happen in her life. She thought such feelings didn't exist. She closed her legs and pulled the blanket. She didn't know what to do anymore. The truth is, many people are hurt so deeply they're willing to be alone and need no one beside them. They don't believe love is real. Night fell and Lee Yan lay in bed telling herself to forget because she would have to sleep under the same blanket with Shul again. It was truly a form of torture to lie next to the man who wanted to devour her just hours before. But with Chu, it seemed like nothing had happened at all. During the day, he threw himself at her, like he wanted to devour her, but now he seemed like a completely different person. Are all men like that, or is she just overthinking? Chu sensed Li Yan's gaze and dropped her eyes from the book, turning to stare at her. She suddenly realized he was watching her. Chu immediately closed the book. He asked if she wanted him to stop reading. She didn't understand why he asked, nor did it concern him, and Chu softly said, "A normal man would do something else when his wife looks at him like that." That made her blush. She quickly replied, "It's not because she couldn't sleep, but because she had already slept before." Chu blushed, understanding, then tried to get her to tell the story from before. Leon was awkward and didn't know how to respond. Should he tell her about planting people in the mountains, then casually choking her, while she attacked him back with a chainsaw? Haha. Did he want to hear about the first time they met? Leon had unpleasant memories of that time and tried to erase them. She said they met on the mountain taking a walk. Leon nodded yes. She was walking on the mountain when she suddenly dropped something, and he ran over to pick it up for her. Sounds familiar, like a classic script, Leon replied with a forced smile. Yeah, very traditional. Let me ask again, did you drop a handkerchief? No, actually, I dropped a chainsaw, mister. But of course she didn't say that. I made it up. She only said it was a small comb. And from there they started meeting. So he asked again if that was the starting point for both of them. She closed with one sentence. Yeah, you could say that. That made him a bit thoughtful. She asked what he was thinking. He just said nothing, only that he was very happy to have gone up the mountain that day. But Lee John regretted it 1,000 times for going up that mountain that day. Still, she never said it aloud. It was just a thought inside, and Chu said that was the first time he ever did something good. Lee Sion just wanted to end the story before Chu asked any more awkward questions. Pretending to be tired, she told Chu she was starting to feel sleepy and wanted to go to bed. Chu understood and turned off the light so they could both sleep. He pulled the desk lamp cord, darkness fell, and both drifted off except Li Zhong, who tossed and turned because Chu was crying in her sleep. She couldn't sleep if that kept happening. Today he was always gentle with her, but now he was crying. Maybe something deep inside him was stirring. She gently wiped his tears, hoping he would stop crying. Suddenly remembering classical music was very helpful for his sleep, she got out of bed to cover him up and then went downstairs. She entered his room, rummaging through all the shelves. Maybe in this box, she'd find what she needed. Looking inside, she smiled softly. Luckily, it was still here. She just found it, the Best of Cello Classics album. For those who don't know, the cello is similar to the violin, belonging to the same violin family, but much larger in size. She found the exact track on her phone and played it. It was the #1 back solo preview. The music played softly, humming into Chu's dream. The mother told him, "See, you can do this. Playing the cello isn't hard. Chu is great. No one else but you can create such beautiful sounds. Isn't this the most beautiful sound you've ever made? Keep going, soon you'll catch up to him, and together you'll make it." Under the lingering melody, Chu stopped crying and calmed down. Li Yan didn't expect it to work. She only tried it thinking it would be useless, but it really did have an effect. His breathing became steadier. So many times Chu wished to sleep peacefully through the night, but never could. She wasn't even sure what she was doing, only softly whispering goodnight to him. A few days later, in an announcement about the Wadum project, a drone flew up to record panoramic views of the forest and mountains as the bright sunlight shone on the treetops. The first competition day finally arrived with an atmosphere full of anticipation mixed with tension. The challenge was clear for a 30-meter tall tree, but not just simple pruning. The real challenge was to climb all 30 meters without using a lift. The first opponent was the Green Tree Hospital, a small facility, but with a reputation backed by the director's extensive experience. Although modest, no one dares to underestimate this hospital, but for Leon, losing is not an option. She cannot collapse before facing Dongsail Hospital, her true target. Leon tightened her safety harness, her eyes fierce, every move cautious. She was preparing for what was coming, but there was still one crucial detail unfinished. Buckling the safety strap, she decisively told Chu to hand her the rope. However, Chu frowned and refused. She was a bit confused and asked what he was doing. His tone was heavy with worry. "Are you planning to climb that tree by yourself?" "Are you crazy?" She calmly replied that she wasn't afraid of heights. Chu insisted the problem wasn't that. No matter how you looked at it, it was still very dangerous, but Lee John was determined not to back down, which is why she was preparing safety measures. Now she wanted him to give her the rope. She urged him to hurry, but he continued to resist. He was in a rebellious phase, refusing to hand the rope to Lee Sion. The host announced the start of the first round for Green Hospital. She pointed to the man beginning to climb the tree, signaling Chu to pay attention. Even the elderly director of Green Hospital climbed the 30-meter tree without any problem. She began explaining that working in planting and caring for trees isn't just about average physical strength. Climbing is a daily part of this job. But the director of Green Hospital had to stop halfway, unable to continue climbing. The branches were heavily bent and covered in slippery moss, making climbing higher impossible. Mrs. Chujia lightly touched Lee Jion's shoulder and advised that it would be best to give up. Even if they don't make money, at least they avoid risking their lives. This is a one-life game. The girl should retreat before an accident happens. But Lee John said that would mean immediate disqualification. Moreover, that tree showed serious abnormal signs, and if left like that, it would affect the surrounding trees. She wanted to deal with it as quickly as possible, so she urged Keel again to give her the rope, but he kept brushing her hand away, refusing. Cheol said he would only hand it over if she went home with him right now. She angrily asked if he was joking at such a time. Cheol replied he wished it were a joke, but it wasn't. He was genuinely afraid she would get hurt. She was momentarily stunned, then answered that yes, she was scared too, but her sense of responsibility was stronger than that fear. This was a competitive bid, and she had voluntarily joined with all enthusiasm. So she asked Cheol not to block her and to give her the rope. At that moment, Cheol raised his hand as high as possible, keeping the rope out of Lee John's reach. She was very tired. She nearly whispered, asking if Cheol was challenging her. He was speechless at Lee John's question. She herself was briefly shocked but gradually regained awareness. She didn't understand why she had said those words. Maybe she had subconsciously gotten used to a compliant Cheol who always obeyed her. He was Kyo. Finally, he answered no and hooked the rope onto her belt. He told Lee John how could she do such a thing. He had no right to challenge her. Didn't Lee John think at all about the husband waiting downstairs? He didn't intend to obstruct, but only wanted to protect her. He wasn't joking. He just hoped she would reassure him. He tightened the rope, and Cheol only cared about her safety. Somehow this touched Lee John's heart like a drop of water softly stirring something inside her. The host reminded that, if ready, the evaluation round would begin. Lee John snapped back, saying she was ready. Mrs. Chujia handed her the chainsaw, warning her to be careful. She told her not to worry. Lee John didn't remember clearly, but this chainsaw once bore Cheol's blood. Yet now he was the one worrying about her, the irony. Meanwhile, Cheol was lost in the ridiculous illusion that she had long been caught in. What did he want after all? For her to willingly let herself be swept away by that illusion? Definitely not. Lee Jin began climbing the tree, gripping the rope tightly. She has climbed over 20 meters. Everyone is amazed by that height. Even the director of the Green Hospital is impressed. Maybe this time she's the one who will succeed. After 32 years of living, she discovers for the first time she's not afraid of heights. It's just that she's never climbed this high before, so she didn't know. The audience below cheers loudly. The biggest problem is when she realizes her body no longer obeys her will. But despite this situation having climbed this far, she is determined to save this tree. Just a little more effort, and she can handle it herself. She must be very careful. She places one foot on a moss-covered branch, but just one wrong slip. She loses control and falls from the tree. Mrs. Chujia screams in panic, calling her name. Seeing Lee John about to fall, she knows she can't react in time. I'm about to fall. At the moment when it seemed like everything was over for Lee John, suddenly something holds her back. Little Chu climbed to the top of the tree and wrapped his arms around her waist so she wouldn't fall. Anjai must be part cat to climb up barehanded at that lightning speed. He quickly asked Lee John if she's okay. She can't believe Chio climbed all the way up here just to help her. Chio clings tightly to a branch, sets Lee John sitting on his legs, now holding onto the tree, with one hand hanging in midair while carrying someone on his lap. He wants to know if she's hurt anywhere. Lee John, both panicked and angry, snaps at Chio, asking if he's crazy. Why would he think of climbing up here without any safety gear? She has a rope tied securely to the tree trunk, so even if she falls, she might survive. But Chio is different. He's climbing barehanded. One slip and he's definitely dead. Why does he have to be so reckless? Chio just smiles. He tells Lee John she probably already knows. Who knows why, but clearly he's doing it because she's his wife, someone incredibly important to him. Mrs. Lee John blushes, unable to believe this man is so reckless because of her. Chil tells Lee John she can decide for herself. If she wants, he will take her down immediately. But if she wants to go to the very end of this competition, he will support her. Lee John firmly replies that she will see it through to the end. She's never given up halfway. Chil, knowing her well, nods. All right then. He tells Lee John to climb onto his back. He will cut the dry branches himself, and she just has to guide him. This time, Lee John immediately refuses Chil's plan. He doesn't even have a safety rope. She tells him to stay on the ground. Doing that would only put him in danger. Chil confidently replies that it's okay. Even if he falls, Lee John will still be safe. Lee John angrily punches his chest with both fists. Her voice, trembling, breaks into a pleading rhythm. Don't ever say that again. She wants him to promise her. She looks straight into his eyes, telling him if he gets seriously hurt today, her life will be over too. According to the green tree doctor, that's her. Clearly she prunes much better than an amateur like Chiol, and that's why she doesn't want him to be overly reckless. Chiol realizes the worry in Lee John's eyes for him. It makes him both happy and blush. He softly apologizes to Lee John. Once on the ground, he will accept all the blame. Now he tells her to hold on tight. In her confusion, she is held firmly by Chiol. Then he puts her on his back. He will take care of cutting the branches himself. At this moment, Lee John clutches his shirt tightly. Chol tells her to wrap her arms around his neck, but she is not mentally prepared for what's coming. Chol tells her to get ready right now. She hurriedly asks where he's going. He grips the rope tied at her waist, using that force to launch himself onto the next branch. This skill is only seen in superhero movies. Carrying someone climbing a tree, then swinging on a rope like a monkey. Oh my God, her mouth wide open. She can't believe Chol can climb the tree using pure strength alone. Chio carefully places each step, then leaps powerfully from branch to branch, climbing straight to the top. In this scene, no matter what you have to call him on the phone, he stopped to rest for a moment and told Lee John that they had arrived. She was dizzy from the rapid movements, so she didn't hear his question clearly. Chio repeated, telling her to hand over the chainsaw so he could do the rest. And Lee John would give directions, just like she said before. He was just an amateur, so Lee John had to guide him on what to do. She realized it would be unreasonable to refuse Kyo's help after he risked his life like this. She reluctantly became the leader for Cho, a worker from Green Tree Hospital, pointing upwards as if they were about to start cutting branches. Could they really carry someone while cutting a tree at that height? But for some reason, he felt they could actually do it. Cho started sawing the branch. Lee John encouraged him, saying he was doing very well. Just cut a little more on the outer side. He asked if that was okay. Lee John said she really liked what she was seeing. He had to keep that position until the end. She leaned close against his shoulder to observe. Watching more closely how he was sawing, she told him to put more strength into it. Feeling Lee John's breath on his ear made him a bit embarrassed and uncomfortable. Lee John praised that the way he was doing it was perfect for her. She told him not to stop, absolutely no stopping. Until she gave the order, he had to keep the feeling like he was sawing really hard. That's right, that's exactly what she wanted, to keep going like that. Feeling how awkward the situation was, Lee John pressed her chest against his back, wrapping her legs around his waist in an intimate position. She whispered that it was almost done, he just needed to do one more time, but stronger. By this time everything was ready, he had to pull out. Of course they were talking about the chainsaw. Anyone who thinks otherwise can't stop that. The dry branch of that troublesome tree broke off, separated, and fell from a terrifying height. The audience and judges all witnessed their real success. They had just done it like a spectacular movie scene. Even the opposing team had to nod in acknowledgement. The entire auditorium congratulated Lee John and Chu for the excellent performance. Lee John turned and repeatedly patted Chu's back happily, saying they did it, they won. Green Tree Hospital, she asked him if he felt exhausted. She was just asking, but kept talking nonstop, not giving him a chance to answer. Still, he was more talented than she thought. He had both strength and skill that made her very satisfied. And Chu replied that she also had a natural talent for guiding. Lee John blushed slightly, feeling happy. Chu nodded yes to the point that he even had hopes for the future. She smiled shyly. Finally, the troublesome branch was removed. The place that hurt would soon heal, and surely a strong new branch would grow. The drone broadcasted live announcing that the first competition at Wadom had ended, and the winner was Spruce Hospital in Vietnamese Green Fir Hospital. Both of them enjoyed the victory celebration scene together. That night, Mrs. Chu Jia told Li Jian that at first Chu didn't blink an eye while she climbed the tree because he kept staring at her butt. But as soon as she wobbled, Chu dashed like a panther faster than a hunting dog. He climbed the tree like a monkey, almost driving Mrs. Chu Jia crazy. To celebrate this victory, she planned to invite Chu Yu for a bottle of wine. Immediately, Li Jian reminded Mrs. Chu Jia that alcohol is very dangerous for someone with an injury. Hearing that, Mrs. Chu Jia asked who said injured. Could someone who can lift a woman with one hand from that height really be weak? If so, then Mrs. Chu Jia would have been dead a long time ago. Li Jian hurried to explain she didn't mean that. If Chu Yu drank and regained his memory, then what would they do? Mrs. Chu Jia waved it off, telling her to stop talking nonsense. She poured a glass and handed it to Chu, but unexpectedly, Li Jian snatched the whole bottle from her, threw back her head, and drank it all. She didn't leave a drop. Mrs. Chu Jia asked what her job was. How could a girl handle drinking such strong alcohol like that? Li Jian replied that from now on she would drink all the alcohol instead of Chu. Mrs. Chu Jia couldn't believe what she had just heard. Chu felt grateful to Li Jian. Clearly, he recognized her concern for him. Li Jian told Mrs. Chu Jia that the one with a headache is also the one who was injured. Although his physique was originally very strong, the few remaining neurons would become even more distorted. It sounded more like a lament than praise. So she would drink all the alcohol instead of him. After many bottles, Li Jian began to wonder where she was. It felt like her legs were floating, a pleasant sensation as if she were sitting on a cloud. She laughed at the comfort, but in reality, Chu was carrying her home. She struggled like a fish on a chopping board. He gently reminded her to stay still or she would fall. She snapped awake and opened her eyes, realizing there was no soft cloud. She was on Chu's back. He asked what she was dreaming about. Sometimes he didn't understand why she drank so much if she couldn't handle alcohol. She replied it was because if she didn't, Chu would. He asked if him drinking made her uncomfortable that much. She nodded yes. Chu wanted to know, why was it because the neurons would become distorted? Now, instead of insulting someone as neurotic, there was a new insult, distorted neurons. Li Jian answered no because she was afraid he might remember his memories. Hearing that, Chu looked at him and remembered the scar on Li Jiang's back. For a moment, he thought maybe he had hurt her too. He asked Li Jiang if she didn't want him to regain his memories. She answered yes. Knowing she was drunk, people always tell the truth. He kept asking if she was very afraid of him. She firmly confirmed yes. He then asked if he had hurt her before. She nodded. Had he done that often? Li Jiang-suk replied that although he never intentionally aimed at her, he seemed to have become used to it. Chu called his former self the one who had made his wife suffer, a despicable, worthless bastard. He had long suspected it, but that guy, the old Chu, was someone who should never have reappeared, a piece of trash worse than a beast deserving to be locked in a coffin and thrown into the deep sea. The worst thing was that he abandoned all the painful memories for Li Yan to bear and then left. An unforgivable bastard. Chu told Li Yan that when he fell down the mountain, why didn't she just leave him there? Then why did she pick him up? He continued asking why someone as beautiful, young, talented, and wonderful as her would care about someone like him. Li Yan replied because of the official bond they had, which was also an unbreakable responsibility. People always say you have to be very careful when signing a contract. Even though she regretted it and suffered a lot, if she could turn back time, she would still sign that contract. Hearing those words, Chu's heart pounded like the waves of the sea, symbolizing how this love was completely drowning him, as if all the tenderness she gave him was embracing him. Chu was someone who once climbed a 30-meter-tall tree with bare hands to save her. She was someone who never gave up, even in the most desperate situations. That's why she couldn't abandon someone like Chu when she was bearing the responsibility. After thinking and finding the answer, Chu continued walking. He thought if she intended to remain bound by the marriage promise forever, this might be an opportunity. A second chance to heal a marriage that was once a disaster. But if a bastard like him had a chance, then clearly God was on his side. The next morning, Li Yan woke up with a terrible headache. She felt like her head was about to explode. What the hell happened last night? Yesterday they passed the Weidom project test, and at the celebration party afterward, she went wild, living it up instead of Chu. Then thinking back what actually happened, suddenly she heard running water. Is Chu taking a shower? He usually showers at night. Thinking carefully, her clothes had also been changed. But wait, did something happen between them last night? Chu stepped out of the bathroom, still wet from the water. He realized Li Zhang had woken up, revealing his sexy body wrapped in a towel. At that moment, Li Yon looked at the scene and instinctively tensed up because she didn't understand what was happening. She awkwardly wanted to ask Chu if he had helped her change clothes last night. Chu replied that Li Yon had done it herself, she didn't need to worry, and he absolutely never touched her. Hearing that, she breathed a sigh of relief. Chu asked if that topic made her uncomfortable. Last night, she even made him go upstairs because she said she would change clothes herself, and she insisted so much that he had to listen. Li Yan glanced down at the towel covering the Chu's lower body. Beneath the fabric, a faint long shape was clearly visible. Chu said that at that time she looked okay but was actually quite drunk. Li Yan felt a bit more reassured hearing that, but still averted her gaze. He reminded Li Zhang, "Don't you remember what you said to me after dinner last night?" Li Zhang was startled and asked, "What did I say?" Interestingly, she couldn't take her eyes off the towel on Chu's body. He told Li Zhang that her memory seemed to be gradually returning. Her face turned pale, her legs trembled, and she shakily asked what he had just said. Chu calmly told Li Zhang, "2 years ago, I had thought about logging myself out." Li Zhang's eyes widened as if time had stopped. He thought log out, but in her heart, she knew that wasn't true because she was the one who knew the truth and had hidden it. Because of that, she always held the upper hand in her relationship with Chu, but for the first time, the game had reversed. Chu said that at that moment, he really had given up, and since then, he no longer wished to wake up. That meant the husband she had 2 years ago was gone because now he was no longer the ex-husband who had hurt her. If she still had the ring from 2 years ago, he wanted her to throw it away. If there were still old photos, it would be better to burn them. Now Li Yan had a new husband, and he had no intention of losing to Chu and her memories. Not only did Li Yan take advantage of her amnesia, but Chu also wanted to comfort her by wiping out the past. He wanted to tell her that the one who had caused her pain and couldn't be saved was gone now. If she had tamed this new husband, then Li Yan would have to be responsible for him to the end. Afterwards, the two sat and ate lunch in the living room, but during the silent meal, Li Yan kept staring at Chu. She wondered if what Chu said earlier was true. If he really started to remember, there would be countless questions in his heart. But why hadn't he asked anything yet? Well, as long as he didn't ask, it was convenient for her too. But that made her feel uneasy. Li Yan hesitantly called to ask if he had something he wanted to say. Wasn't he curious? Chu replied, not exactly. So he didn't want to know his past, what had happened to the old Chu. Even she was curious to understand why he had decided to log out of the world. Deep inside, she knew nothing about Chu. She needed to know why he cried every night, because that might be closely related to what Chu had just mentioned about sleeping with June. He said he knew the two people were sharing one body, meaning him now, and him from 2 years ago. He wasn't sure, but maybe he had thought about logging out because of regret. He didn't know where that guy had lived or what trash heap he had crawled out from, but he was definitely an idiot to think that was his only choice. Chu was still torturing himself over the person he used to be. But when she mentioned Li Zhang's ex-husband, it made him nauseous because that person had scared her. He had even physically harmed her and caused her injury. He asked if at least that guy was good at making money. Leon replied, well, not enough to say he made a lot of money. Chu sighed and turned away, saying he already knew that. Leon didn't understand what he meant. He said that no matter what, Leon had too much responsibility, and that was the problem. Clearly, even she didn't know how to take better care of herself, so it was best not to leave her alone. He looked up at her face that looked pretty miserable. He told her that if she picked up a useless man, at least she should know how to use him properly. Leon didn't know how to react. She bowed her head, stammering, "People aren't easy to change." Hearing that, he cleared his throat and struck his chest confidently. "You mean you're making a comparison?" He understood that she had been through a lot. But didn't she think that now he was different from before? Leon replied that she wasn't sure. Chu asked her why she reacted that way. It seemed like Li Zhang was not acting wisely. He said he could become anyone Li Zhang wanted. He could be the man of her dreams. But at the same time, unfortunately, he still carried the same skin and body as that bastard. If in the end she couldn't erase that trash from her memory, he would hurt himself as a form of punishment. At this moment, Li Zhang sensed the despair in Chu's reaction. She tried to suppress a laugh. She shouldn't be laughing in this situation. Chu was happy to see his wife smile. He told Li Zhang that he had just remembered something that made him curious. She asked him what it was. "This hospital has 3 people, right? Li Xian is the director. Mrs. Chuzha is the manager. And Chu is the staff. It seemed Chu had formed his own structure linked to the hospital to fulfill his role as Li Yan's husband well. He needed to be sure he knew who he needed to meet. Li Yan said that in that case there was also the hospital's unofficial entomologist, the boy Li Gubek. But thinking back to the last time Gubek came, Chu was asleep, so that was fine. But what about the future? Would Chu leave behind a child? How could such a dangerous combination exist in this world? Chu hesitated and asked what was wrong. She said a little fearfully that there was an unofficial insect doctor at the hospital, but recently the boy hadn't visited often because he was busy studying. But maybe one day they would meet. Jubek, passing by the hospital, spotted Chu. The kid remembered this guy always went with the director. He was planting banana trees. They looked at each other suspiciously. He wondered who that child was. One unexpected day, Gubek appeared here and officially met Chu.